Hey everyone, so welcome to my very first tier list video, and I've been wanting to make this video for a really long time, a tier list of all the TMNT games, and thank you for watching. So let's figure out how many TMNT games there are and how many we're going to have to be rating. Right, let's ask our friend Meta AI how many TMNT games there actually are, and then we'll go and do a Google search. How many TMNT games, including browser and mobile games, do you think there are?
There have been numerous Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles (TMNT) games developed over the years, spanning various platforms, consoles and PC. 1. Arcade, 1989. 2. SNES, Genesis, Game Gear, etc., 1989 to 1995. 3. PlayStation, N64, Game Boy Color, 1995 to 2000. 4. Xbox, GameCube, PSN2, BAT, 2002-2005, 5. Xbox 360, Wii, PSN3, PS, PSP, 2007-2012, 6. Current gen consoles, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, 2013 present, browser games, 1. Flash-based games, 2000s 2010s, 2. HTML5 games, 2010s present, mobile games, 1. Java-based games, 2000s, 2. Operating system, Android apps, 2008 present, estimating the exact number is challenging, but here's a rough breakdown. Console and PC games, 50 to 70 titles, browser games, 100 to 200 titles, mobile games, 50 to 100 titles total estimated TMNT games, 200 370 titles. Keep in mind that this is a rough estimate, as new games are released regularly. Are you a TMNT game enthusiast? Favorite TMNT game or genre? Action, fighting, platformer.
What the fuck? 200 to 370 titles?
Yes, it's staggering. TMNT's enduring popularity across decades led to numerous games. 1. Classic arcade and console titles. 2. Movie tie-ins. 3. TV show adaptations. 4. Mobile and browser spin-offs. 5. Indie developments factors contributing to the high number. 1. Multiple platforms, consoles, PC, mobile, browser. 2. Various genres, action, fighting, platformer, puzzle. 3. Different developers and publishers. 4. Frequent releases over 30 plus years. Some notable TMNT games. 1. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 1989 arcade. 2. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, 1990 to SNES. 3. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 2003 Game Boy Advance. 4. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, 2021. Explore online archives like 1. Moby Games. 2. GameFAQs. 3. Giant Bomb to see the extensive list of TMNT games. Mind-blowing, right?
Alright, we're definitely going to have to break this video down into many parts. So first part is going to be the classic games, and we're going to break all the eras down based on like when the animated TV shows were released. So for the first era, it's going to be the run of the OG TV show, which was 1987 until 1997, I think, and then a few years beyond that before the second animated TV show started. So this time range is going to include 1987 to 2002. Hope you like it. I'm sure many of you know this story. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I think it was in 1983 that Kevin Eastman drew Michelangelo first, and then Peter Laird drew the other turtles, and then after that they published their first couple of comics in 1984, and that's when the Ninja Turtles blew up because the comic sales were just like out of the charts, and everyone really loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as their dark portrayal at that time. The first couple of issues of the comics were what the first live-action movie was derived from, and the second animated TV show also drew a lot of inspiration from the first couple of comics. And it was because of the sales of the comics that the franchise grew and expanded into other forms of media, like action figures, the animated TV show. The animated TV show was very different tone-wise from the comics. It was like much goofier and lighter than the darker and more serious comics. And of course there were video games, which we're going to talk about a lot shortly.
They're the Turtles out to polish off crime.
Oh, look what they did to my shell.
Aw, keep cool. A little wax and it'll shine like new.
Turtles laughing in the face of danger.
It could be a trap.
Yep, it's a trap.
Turtles battling for a larger slice of pizza.
Yeah, give me a slice of anchovies and peanut butter.
They're the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in a half shell.
Today at 10 on Fox for the Tri-Cities WETO.
Splinter the Rat taught them each the ninja arts. Donatello, master of the staff. War! Leonardo, the katana blade.
My God!
Raphael, the
Don't
sleeve.
throw this at home, kids!
And Michelangelo, the nunchakus.
Radical! And master of the willing pizza. Hey, who had the pepperoni and ice cream? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
From Playmates.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell.
Splinter the Rat, leader of the Turtles, taught them each the ninja arts. Now he must face something far more deadly. The Shredder, leader of the Foot Clan and sworn enemy of the Turtles.
It feels so good to be so bad.
How can a good rat avoid a bad cut-up?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
From Playmates.
Now, the animated TV show was like the first ever anything I fell in love with, whether it was a movie or a TV show or anything, and I think that's what got a lot of fans to be TMNT fans, because they were just like glued through the animated TV show because it was just like so awesome at the time with all its kick-ass ninja action and all the fun and everything. Now, of course, with the media empire already built, with a ton of action figures already being sold, a TV show that was a super hit, which everyone wanted to watch, there was only a matter of time when the video games would be released, and the first video game was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1989 for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and it was ported to other consoles, but most people just remember it from like the Nintendo Entertainment System, so that's what we're going to be focusing on. So as we established early on, even if when we look back at the older games from the late 1980s, the 1990s, and the very early 2000s, there's still a lot of like ports and a lot of different versions. So we're just going to be focusing on the main games, the games that people are familiar with, that they have most likely played, and this one is like the first of the games that most people have most likely played. There isn't really much to say about this game other than the fact that it has a reputation for being excruciatingly difficult for everyone who played it, and people who played it mostly they were kids like really young kids when this was out, and they didn't know what to do or where to go because it was so cryptic. Because everything was like a maze, like you don't know which path to take to progress the game. There are boss fights like the one you just saw versus Bebop, where you can use Donatello and glitch him out like the angry video game nerd shows us. But other than that, like this was basically how the game played. Like there was this random fire dude who wasn't even in the animated TV show to begin with, which is another feature of this game that the angry video game nerd pointed out, that there are very few enemies that were actually from the TV show. And as you can see, this frog guy, like he was never in the TV show. I'm pretty sure that's not the fun frogs, this is some random frog guy. And I think the manual confirms that, and then you have Fire Dude over here. So, yeah, like, I mean, there's not a lot to say. It was just, like, I never played this video game. There's a foot soldier right there, or what looks like a foot soldier. So I don't have many experiences to draw on. And here is the top-down perspective. And then you go into another room and have to clear out another bunch of enemies. And there's this like robotic thing over here, and then we go to the boss fight, which is pretty soon. Boss fight versus Rocksteady. Like you had to have a lot of skill to beat this game, so I guess one of the good features about this game was that it's, even though it's from like a time where games didn't have a lot of storage space for longevity, this one did, because they just made it really hard. And here's a boss fight with Rocksteady. Again, the angry video game nerd shows us that if you get him underneath the boxes and you keep hitting him with Donatello, even if it doesn't hit him, you still manage to beat him. So yeah, so going back to the longevity, back then there was very limited storage space, so they couldn't make the games like really big because that would take up a lot of storage space. So the only way to like ensure longevity was to make the games like super hard, and that's how this game was. Like it was like way too hard. And I suppose we can now sort of rate this game. And I suppose another feature that's widely remembered with this game is the excruciatingly hard water level, which is what is going to occur now. Like everyone says this level was a level of their nightmares, and it really pushed them and like beat their ass. And I can like sort of see why, because you have to swim and you gotta you're timed and you gotta avoid all these like electrical charges, and yeah, it's a lot you gotta get done.
Hello, how are you? I am under the water. Please help me. Here too much raining.
We need you to build a submarine.
A submarine?
Yeah.
Do you know, Ricky, how fucking complicated it is to build a submarine?
It's not hard at all. We looked online. There's videos, man. Yeah.
There's videos, yeah. Did you notice if anybody survives in the videos?
Just go on YouPorn, and there's like 3 or 4 videos how to make a submarine.
So here we are with the first rating on our tier list. Now, Ninja Turtles 1989 NES was, I guess, a good game for like a lot of people. Like it added a lot of depth. Like you had to move around from the top-down perspective, go into like different rooms and go into like different underground areas, fight a different bunch of enemies, and see where to go, find the Technodrome. So it added a bunch of depth to the gameplay, as opposed to like just a side-scroller where you just keep going from left to right and beat everyone up, and that's how the game progresses. But again, it's like you have to look back at who this game was made for. Like it was mostly made for kids back in the day, and for kids, like it's not a good idea to like make something too complicated. I guess there were like some kids, they're like really smart and they're sort of like ahead of their age, like they might enjoy it, but overall everyone just wanted like a Ninja Turtles game in which you beat up the foot soldiers and beat up the bosses, and that's how you progress the game. So I guess like it earns a lot of points for adding like a lot of dimensions and depth to the gameplay, which was sort of ahead of its time. But like when they say that great game is what balances the difficulty is just like right. It's not too hard, it's not too easy, and I think for this one they made it a little bit too hard for like most people's liking. So we're gonna go ahead and rate this one a solid C tier. Like even by the 1989 standards, I would say it's like it could have been better, but it was definitely not the worst of the lot. And now we move on to TMNT arcade game 1989. Now this game was way ahead of its time. Like the graphics were really good. No one had ever seen or heard graphics like this before. Like everyone was used to like Pac-Man graphics back then, or like Super Mario graphics back then, but then in like the late 1980s and the early 1990s we got like 16-bit like games with very smooth gameplay and very good controls, and this was one of them. So everyone would be lining up in the arcade with their quarters to play this game, and if you were in USA or Canada, you'd probably be paying like, I don't know, 25 cents or like 50 cents for 2 bars of health for this game. But like where I was in the Indian region, for most of the arcade games, to get like one token, which one token for in this game was 2 lives, and in Turtles in Time was also 2 lives, you'd have to pay the equivalent of $3. And way back then, $3 for one off gaming session at the arcade was like way too much money. So I didn't even want to bother my mom and dad to ask them for that money for just for like, I don't know, maybe like 2 minutes of gameplay, because I had no idea I'd get yelled at. So back then all I could do was like admire from a distance about how good the game looked and how good it would be to like actually play it. And the fun fact is that I didn't even know that this game was an arcade game first and then got ported to the NES later on. Like I thought the only type of game that existed for this game was the NES game, and that was it. But like obviously that's not true. It started off as an arcade and then got ported to the NES, and then when I saw this later on in Canada, that there was actually an arcade game like this, I was like pretty mesmerized, and I thought, well, like, so there wasn't just Turtles in Time, there was another arcade game which was very similar to the NES port that you could actually also play. And what this game did really well was that they kept it simple. Like all you do is go from left to right and you beat up a bunch of foot soldiers and you'd beat the bosses, and everyone in this game was recognizable from the TV show. Like you had Bebop Rocksteady, Baxter Stockman as the bosses, Baxter Stockman in his human form as one of the bosses, and then you had Granitor, Trag, and obviously Shredder and Krang, and they were all recognizable if you saw the TMNT show at that time, the show that was running in like late 80s and the 1990s. And that's about it. That's really all I have to say about this game. Is so because you have to take into consideration, you're looking at it from the focal point of like this game is only in the arcades during this era, because it's way too powerful for you to like actually have it at home. So all you would basically do is like, if you wanted to see the end of this game, is you would have to take like $20 worth of quarters and keep pumping the quarters in to like actually see the end of the game, because at that time like no one knew the tricks. Like you could beat the bosses using the up down method, you could like press the A B to like dispatch a lot of foot soldiers with the special move. Then there was a way to like beat Krang where you just go left right and keep hitting him. Like no one knew all those tricks back then, so chances are you'd have to spend a lot of quarters. And then if you spent like $20 worth of quarters on like one gaming experience, which was like, I don't know, maybe like half an hour to 40 minutes, your mom and dad probably got pissed, because you could rent a game for like that amount of money and you could keep the game for like 3 days or like a week or stuff. But to use all that money for like 30 minutes gameplay, like I'm pretty sure a lot of people's parents would get angry about that. But that's about it. Like I mean, that's all I really have to say about this game from like the focal point of like it's only in the arcades. It would also be a lot of fun to like play this with a bunch of buddies and see how far you could reach. Like I don't know, like maybe on a like $1 budget or like a $2 budget, which is like usually the budget people had to play this game back then. So I guess we can go to the tier list now and rate this, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows what rating I'm gonna give this game. So Ninja Turtles Arcade is literally the first game that's going to be S tier, simply because of the reason being that everyone wanted to play this game in the arcades and there were huge lines and people were willing to spend a lot of money to like progress in this game. It was meant to be a quarter guzzler or a 50-cent guzzler, and that's exactly what it did. So this is the first S tier game that's going to be on our list. Now it's worth noting that Konami built a few handheld games for the Ninja Turtles, and both of these handheld games were released in 1989 during the release of the NES Ninja Turtles game and the arcade Ninja Turtles game, and these were both handheld. And there was Ninja Turtles 1 and there was Ninja Turtles 2, and I could only find like accurate gameplay footage of Ninja Turtles 1, and this is how Ninja Turtles 1, the Konami handheld, looked like. I didn't have Ninja Turtles 1 or Ninja Turtles 2 as far as the Konami handheld games goes. I only had Ninja Turtles 3, and all I remember was a few sprites from that game, but this is how the first handheld of Konami is played. You can see some of the sound effects are pretty similar to the 1989 NES one because it was developed by Konami. So because I didn't really have these games for myself, I can't really rate them, and there's no nostalgia with them for me. So unfortunately, we're gonna go to the tier list now, and we're gonna put this under like never played. So that's just how it is. So here we are, and we're back on our tier list, and like we said before, since we haven't played these games, we're gonna have to put them under haven't played, and this is how our list looks so far, and we're moving on now. And then we have Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan, which was the first Ninja Turtles game for the Game Boy, and again, I did not play this game back in the day because I did not have the Game Boy. But we're just going to have a look at it and see how it is and share our thoughts. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know this game, especially after the Cowabunga collection, because everyone's browsed through the Cowabunga collection and seen all the games and have figured out what to do. But I've never played this game even though I have the Cowabunga collection. It looks decent enough for a Game Boy game. In fact, it looks pretty good for a Game Boy game. That's all I can say is that it doesn't have like a lot of jerky gameplay like a lot of Game Boy games had. But I guess you don't have this white and black background. In the Game Boy, it would have been black and green, which would have made it look a little worse. But for a handheld, this actually looks pretty good. However, since I have not played this game, I don't know if I can actually rate it. Because in order to rate it, you'd have to like progress through the game. You'd have to have like maybe a few like fond memories about it or a few bad memories about it, because nostalgia plays a lot of vital roles in how someone rates a game. So all I can say is that all in all, it looks pretty good. Like the graphics for the Game Boy look pretty good, and I sort of wish that I played it back in the day and I had a Game Boy on the go for when I would not have access to my NES, but unfortunately I did not. So here goes Fall of the Foot Clan on Haven't Played. Now this is not to take away anything from anyone who has fond memories of playing this back in the day or playing this using the Cowabunga collection. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have fond memories about it. This is just my personal tier list, so if I haven't played the game, I can't say if it's good or bad, so that's just the way it is. I'm happy for anyone who's actually liked this game a lot. Good. Kudos to you. So now we have Ninja Turtles 2 NES, which was a port of the arcade game, so that you could bring the arcade game home with you and play it, be it a very downgraded port, sound-wise and graphics-wise. But nonetheless, it was something rather than nothing, so we gotta give it some credit, because this is the best that they could do back then, as there were no 16-bit consoles, there were only 8-bit consoles. But I actually have a lot of memories with this game, and I was actually the guy who sort of used to be the sidekick because my bro was the one who was actually good at the game and who could actually progress further. Like, all I would do is help him beat a bunch of the foot soldiers and fight the bosses like a little bit, but I would be the guy who like used to die earlier. So that used to be my role in this game now. My bro was the one who could actually beat this game on like 3 continues and 3 lives, and then I think it was like once you reach 100 points you get another life, so you sort of had to like replenish your lives that way. Like, you had to like rack up a lot of points. But the only way I was able to beat this game was it had like different versions of the ROM where you could play the game with sort of like a different mode. Like there were different ROMs of this game on the cartridge, so I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about, but back then there were different ways of playing the same game on the same cartridge. Like on the same cartridge there'd usually be a bunch of games, and there'd be different modes for the game. So like one mode would be the standard mode, like 3 lives and 3 continues. Then there'd be another mode which would be like 5 lives and 5 continues, and then there'd be another one which was 10 lives and 10 continues. So I think I had to use the 5 lives and 5 continues one to beat this game back in the day solo. But I definitely have a lot of experiences with this game, and it was definitely a step up from the 1989 game, even though I didn't play the 1989 game. A lot of people who have played both, that's what they say, that they found this one a lot better. And I like that it's basically a port of the arcade game, so it has a lot of Ninja Turtles characters from the TV show. Now, the Bebop and Rocksteady boss fights were something that I used to get beat up on a lot, and like when you don't know what the tactics are, like how the gameplay in this video, they know exactly the tactics on how to beat the bosses, because we didn't have Nintendo power in the Indian regions, and we didn't know how to like basically use the best tactics in the game. So it used to take a lot of beating on the bosses. Like, Rocksteady's kicks and used to do a lot of damage, and his bullets used to do a lot of damage too. And you can see like how much of a bullet sponge, or like martial arts punches and kicks and slashes sponge the enemies were in this game, because it takes a long time to beat them. And then we had the shredder scene just like the arcade game. So followed by the fire building, the fire that's gripping through the building, we go back to the streets of New York and we fight a few foot soldiers here. And then it was this Bebop boss fight that was actually pretty challenging. And you can see like the NES with its limited color palettes has like a very how should I say, plain background look of the game. Like, there's very few detail, a lot of pixels, very few colors. But yeah, I guess the trick to beat these bosses were to like use your jumping kick a lot, but back then we didn't know that, and we just sort of used to try to do a frontal assault and always used to get beat the hell up. I suppose since I'm a TMNT video game veteran now, I would be like slightly better at this game if I tried it. This is probably just the last full boss fight that we're gonna watch, and then we'll watch shorter versions. Like, I just want to show you guys how much of a hit sponge all the bad guys were in this game. So after we beat the streets of New York, we beat the foot soldiers in the streets of New York and Bebop, we go down to the sewers and we fight some more foot soldiers. And here's when we fight Baxter Stockman in his human form, and a lot of people say that this is a really easy boss fight, and I have to agree, like, even in the arcade game it's pretty easy. So you just use your jumping kicks and beat him this way and destroy all his mousers. And really all he had was his mousers, and that was it. And then he becomes a fly. Shredder makes him a fly. And Shredder's famous catchphrase, "Tonight I dine on turtle soup." Then we go up back to the streets of New York, but the weather control device has made everything basically a snow city. I don't know if people remember the weather control device from the animated TV show. It was like this small circular object that Krang had, which the rock soldiers used to throw up into the air and then used to change the weather, so it made everything freeze and a winter, sort of. And this was one of the bosses that they made for the video game exclusively, who wasn't in the TV show or the movies or anything, so that was a good touch that they added to the game. They gave a little bit more content because they weren't able to replicate the arcade sound and graphics, but so that's impressive. And I guess the best way to beat him too is to use those jumping kicks, and then once you beat him you destroy that circular weather control device. I guess in the games it's on the ground, but in the TV show it was all the way up in the air, and they had to use that Neutrino's flying car to go and slice it in the air. Spring is here. And this is the infamous, what are they called, the parking lot stage where you fight Baxter Stockman again. And there he is in all his fly form glory. And back then I didn't even know that they basically got this idea from the movie series The Fly, which was a 1950s movie and was remade in the 1980s again, so that's pretty cool. And then he shoots all these projectiles at you from the air, so the only way to defeat him is to use your jumping kicks. And I think he's more challenging in this game than he is in Turtles in Time. And you also have a pizza, so you can recharge your health. You keep kicking him with your flying kick. This guy's hardcore, he didn't even need the pizza. And you rescue April and you get a smooch from April. Which I always found pretty funny. And now this is the level where you gotta clear the way for the turtle van, because there's so many foot soldiers and barricades on the highway. Beat a bunch of these multicolored foot soldiers. Beat up a few more foot soldiers behind these tires, and then when you jump over these tires you go on your skateboard and you gotta defeat all these copters that the foot soldiers are on, which was a nice change of pace because this was a level that you did on the skateboards, just like the arcade game. Once you clear the last of the copters, the way is clear. And then you're going, still going, everything's great, cut up to the turtle van. Oh no! And we're back under the highway, and we have the crashed turtle van. We've caught up to the mousers that are taking Splinter. But we're back on the streets now. We make our way through the main streets until a module drills its way from the underground, opens up, and then these robots get out of it that are flying and shoot lasers all over the place. Take the robots out. As we make our way through the main streets, we have a bunch of these turrets that are shooting at us that we need to neutralize. There go the turrets. And we get a pizza in the end. That's a good way to recharge. And now we fight Granitor, who's like an even bigger hit sponge than Bebop and Rocksteady. He just like takes hits and hits after hits. So 2 to 3 minutes later, after continuously hitting him with the flying kick, finally managed to get him weakened up and just managed to defeat him before losing a life. This guy's pretty hardcore. We rescue Splinter and then he thanks us. Thank you, my turtles. And now we go to another level which was exclusive to the NES game. This wasn't in the arcade game, it was like this East Asian sort of training dojo, ninjutsu dojo. Fight a bunch of foot soldiers. We make our way further in after defeating a few of the enemies, and then these mysterious tigers come to life and attack us. White tigers. And these enemies were also exclusive only to the Nintendo game. They weren't there in the arcade game. They would sure tank a lot of hits. There goes the first of the tigers. And after reaching the end of the dojo, you get a pizza to recharge your health, and you fight another exclusive boss to the NES game named Shogun, who hasn't appeared in any of the other types of media as far as TMNT goes. Like, he hasn't appeared in any of the TV shows or the movies, just this video game, or the comics. Hasn't appeared in the comics either. And you keep using your kicks to, you guessed it, weaken him. So many hits later, his body's weakening and his head detaches because he's a robot and flies all over the place and sort of hits you. And you finally beat him. Just like the Terminator. This guy keeps beating all the bosses with his lives intact. It's pretty impressive. And here we go to the Technodrome. We finally reached the Technodrome from the entrance. We gotta find the Technodrome. You found it already. And then here's a gauntlet of enemies and two sub-bosses that you gotta fight. So making your way underneath the Technodrome, we finally stumble upon Trag, who's another hit sponge and just tanks hits after hits. 2 minutes and many flying kicks later. After beating Trag, we go through the next level of the Technodrome, and out comes Krang. And I don't know if you could use the front and back method to beat him in this game also. I guess you gotta use the up and down method to beat him, but in the arcade game you could use the front and back method to beat him, and he was pretty easy to beat. 3 minutes and many flying kicks later. And there goes Krang. He sure packs a bigger punch in this than he does in the arcade game. I'm invincible! And there, out comes Shredder, which was like one of the hardest boss fights in the game because he clones himself, and you always gotta fight him one more than the amount of turtles you have on screen. So if you have one turtle, you have to fight 2 of them. If you have 2, you gotta fight 3 of them. And since this game was only 2-player, you only had like maximum 2 turtles, so you maximum fight 3 of the Shredders. 4 minutes and many flying kicks later. So once you got his mask off, you were able to like get the beatdown going. And what was really difficult about this boss fight was that he had his retro mutagen ray and he could instantly take away a life of yours if it hit you. And that's how Shredder went down and the whole Technodrome went down. Now, I know I'm gonna get a lot of criticism, maybe even some hate for this, but that's just the way I feel about this game, because what came later was made it look worse by comparison. So I would say this game is literally a B tier for me, and a lot of people would say that's being really harsh. The game was really good, they did the best they could, but like I said, what came afterwards made it look worse by comparison. So I don't think I can give it more than a B tier. Again, this is just my personal list. I'm not asking you to agree with me, but that's just the way it felt to me. So we're gonna move on now to the next game. Now, the next game to be released chronologically was Turtles in Time, the arcade version, and there were two versions of Turtles in Time. The arcade version and the Super Nintendo version. We're gonna go into more depth when we analyze the Super Nintendo version, but as far as the chronology goes, this one was released shortly after the Ninja Turtles 2 NES game, and this was another really good arcade game that was released for the Ninja Turtles after the initial 1989 arcade game.
My toes!
And all I remember about the arcade game was when it was like in its prime. I should say the time when you were supposed to play it in the arcades, when the arcades were around and they were booming, was like I said before, was I saw this in an arcade in India, and it cost like way too much to play. Like it cost the equivalent of $3 American for 2 bars of life. So I really couldn't afford to play this at this time, so I used to just marvel at how smooth the gameplay and the graphics used to look from a distance. That's literally the only history I have with this game, but when we analyze it now, since we have emulators in the car and the Kawabunga collection has been legally released on the Kawabunga collection, we can see like how smooth the gameplay looks, how good the controls feel. Those are all aspects that make this game like really good, because just by looking at it you can see how smooth everything is. And having played this game myself a little bit later on, like using emulators and the Kawabunga collection, is I can say the controls are really good. Like what they did with this one was they added a back attack, and they added the throw attack, and they added the throw to the screens, which gave it a lot more like depth as far as the gameplay was concerned, because you could take like a foot soldier and throw them onto another foot soldier, which was really fun. So all in all, this game was like super fun. And basically this game and the NES had the same bosses, with the exception of like a few bosses which we're gonna go into now. So when we're in the sewer stage, we just fight a bunch of these pizza monsters until the stage finishes. And this is basically like how a sort of boss fight looks like for the third level. There's a bunch of pizza monsters that all come swarming at you, and then Shredder sends you back in time.
I'm banishing you to a time warp from which you will never return.
And we'll go more into depth about the game and how the game progresses when we analyze the SNES version. So when we're in the prehistoric Turtlesaurus stage, we fight Cement Man in the end as the boss, whereas in the SNES version we fight Slash, the evil turtle from Dimension X, in the end of this stage.
Man!
He's a pretty easy boss to defeat. Like you just gotta make sure you don't get hit by his like putty or whatever he throws, and you just go under him or slightly above him and beat him like that. Once we're done this stage, we go to the Skull and Crossbones stage, where we fight Tokka and Razar. At the end of the Skull and Crossbones stage in the arcade version, you fight Tokka and Razar. whereas in the Super Nintendo version you fight Bebop and Rocksteady, and you fight Toka and Razar a little bit earlier in the Technodrome level. So this is how the boss fight of Toka and Razar looks in the arcade game. You have all the rain and everything. Once you defeat them, they turn back into baby versions of their original self when they weren't mutated. And you complete the stage. And you get sent back into the time vortex to the future. Now, important aspect is to remember that in the arcade version, in the Neon Knight Rider stage, we just keep going from left to right. But in the Super Nintendo version, they had the Mode 7 graphics, so you used to actually go up and down also. Like, you used to change the view, and it would seem like you're going forward and backwards also, not just left and right. So when we show the game, we're gonna tell the difference.
The final shell shock.
And now, during the final boss fight versus Shredder, the difference between the arcade version and the SNES version is that in the arcade version you just fight regular Shredder, and this time he doesn't clone himself, you just fight him 1v1, but he still has a retro mutagen ray to like take a whole bar of your health. And when we go to the NES version, you're gonna see the difference because you also fight Super Shredder, and he also has a bunch of different attacks and more powerful attacks. So you can say that in the SNES version, the final boss fight is a little harder. Now, all in all, I would say that the Turtles in Time arcade version is really, really good, and where it really excels is the smooth gameplay because of like the higher RAM capabilities and the higher processing capabilities. And the other aspect of the game where it really excels is that you can play up to 4 players, whereas in the Super Nintendo one you can only play 2 players. So we're gonna go to the tier list now, and we're gonna rank this game on our tier list. So Turtles in Time Arcade for me is a solid A tier game, and I know I'm gonna piss off some of the people by not making it S tier, but the only thing I have against the game, and like sort of the only criticism I have, is that left out a bunch of important characters like Bebop and Rocksteady / that later games would incorporate. Thus, I think like the roster could have been a little better for Turtles in Time, the arcade game. So we're moving on now to our next game. So releasing next chronologically, we have Ninja Turtles 2 for the Game Boy, Back to the Sewer, and just like the other Game Boy game, this is a game that I have not played, and this is actually how the game would look back in the day with the green and black graphics. Again, there's not much to say about the gameplay in the game in general, just considering it's a Game Boy game, and it was a portable game, so it wasn't meant to like be as good as the NES games or the SNES games. It was just like something to keep you occupied while you didn't have access to your gaming consoles, and I guess for that it definitely does its job, because if I had this way back in like 1991, this would definitely do the job for me. And it looks like a good game overall, but as far as I'm concerned, there's no nostalgia with this game for me, so I'm gonna have to put it in the not played category again, because that's just how it is. And even back in the day, then very few people had access to all the Ninja Turtle games, so you'd be bound to like not have a few games and therefore not having played them. So back to our tier list. So unfortunately we're gonna have to place this on the haven't played list. Now, just a side note, I'm pretty sure a lot of people might have noticed that I haven't mentioned the PC or DOS port of the Ninja Turtles arcade game, or the Manhattan Missions, which was an exclusive PC game for the DOS system released at that time. And the reason I haven't included those was because those games weren't like really popular back in the day. Like not a lot of people knew about them. Only the PC gamers knew about them. So they weren't really big to begin with. So unfortunately, I haven't included them onto this list. Moving on now. So next up we have Ninja Turtles 3 The Manhattan Project, and boy do I have a lot to say about this game. Like, you can see me playing this game from like way back in 2018 when I posted my playthrough of this game. All I'm gonna say is that this game like literally improved on everything Ninja Turtles 2 did. Like, it added special moves, it added more characters, it added a bigger roster, it added like more gameplay. Like, everything was enhanced, and like I really love playing this game. So I'm just gonna like go into like a little bit of like background history of when I played it back in the day. So I actually like never owned this game when I was a kid, and this was like a new game that was going around back then, like way back, because like in the Indian regions everything was like years and years, like it came later. So like how it would have released in 1992 in like USA and Japan, so we got this in like in the Indian regions, like let's say in like 1994. And way back then I didn't own this. I used to just like borrow this game from like a friend and try to beat it. And when I was a kid, this game like basically kicked my ass. It's for this reason that I say the gameplay in this for the NES was like literally perfect. It was like the perfect NES game that could be made, because the difficulty was just right. It was like not excruciatingly hard like Battletoads, and it was like a little bit easier than, I would say, Ninja Turtles 2, and it was like just perfect. Like, it wasn't too easy and it wasn't too hard. And then it went back and basically enhanced everything that Ninja Turtles 2 did. So like all in all, I love this game. So I'm just gonna let my past self, for when I posted my playthrough of this game, like narrate how this game was and what happens in the game and how you progress.
I use Leo for this because like he's the most well-rounded and the easiest. If you played these old Turtles games, you know. So the Turtles are enjoying their vacation on a beach in Florida. Then suddenly, come on, April's report is just about to start. Gotta love the old 8-bit music. And there's April. Here in New York City, crime is escalating every day. Gee, what happened? Okay, 8-bit Shredder. Shredder theme. Bummer dude's a Shredder. Yeah, I love these old NES graphics. Turtles, I'm taking April along with Manhattan Island. If you want them back, come and get them. Oh yeah, that's a badass pose. So his first level's on a beach. Let's go, Turtles. The start of a long, hard battle is beginning. I love the old NES sprites and everything. So with this game, like usually if you use the up-down method, it's pretty good in fighting off like all these foot soldiers and stuff. But I mean, as you go like later on, it keeps getting harder and harder. So what you really have to do is you gotta conserve your life and not get hit, basically. And because the other thing in this game is when you use your special move, you take some hits, which you're gonna see later on. And here comes Rocksteady. It's pretty easy. All you gotta do is basically use the up and down method, and like I was saying before, and just use your special move and keep hitting him with that. And you almost like he's almost like glowing. And there we go. Almost lost all my life over there, but worked out in the end. So like this is the surfing stage, and a lot of traps, is like they say, or like hazards or whatever you're gonna call it in this one. So like this is the surfing stage, and a lot of traps, is like they say, or like hazards or whatever you're gonna call it in this one.
Now it's worth noting that when I was a kid and this game was sort of new-ish, like no one knew how to use all those tricks of like the up-down method and like basically using your super move to destroy Rocksteady like that easily. So everyone used to take a few hits from Rocksteady, and then as we progressed, it'd have less and less health. So the game really used to kick our ass back then.
Now it's when those these things pop up now. Now we're on to submarine, and those are almost one-hit kills with your special move.
After defeating those flyers that the foot soldiers were using, we board the submarine and we go from one end of the submarine to the other. The submarine's like surfaced right now, so it's not under the water.
Yeah, there's ground check. It was like literally in 1 or 2 episodes of the old cartoon, or like an animated TV show, whatever you want to call it.
Who the heck are you guys?
I'm ground chuck. Don't mind. We ain't around to just rip this place apart. Come on, dirtbag.
That's all you gotta do with him. He's like really not that hard to beat. Scene 3, watch your step along the bridge of danger. Now, this is like basically, I would say, the last of the easy levels. After that, it gets quite challenging.
I just want to say that this music is totally tubular. You want to jam to it so much.
I think you fight Slash now. Yeah, I think now it's time to fight Slash, and he's super easy too. Like once you get dropped off, all you gotta do is hit him with your super. Alright, got him now. Yeah, there we go. Always have those near hit misses. And the good thing about this level is right after Slash they give you the pizza, so you can just get all your health back. So we're gonna reach Bebop pretty soon, I guess. Yeah, I think after you fight these rock soldiers, you fight Bebop. And, like, I kind of noticed through trial and error that you can glitch out Bebop in this game as well. Well, you couldn't glitch out Bebop in games previous to this, but there was a lot of, like, glitches in these old Turtles NES games. This one just works like you gotta position yourself, him just underneath the truck, and then he'll come to you. Yeah, and that's all you do. Like he's just gonna stand there and like do whatever he's supposed to, while you do your special move and just beat the crap out of him. This controller is a little bit harder to press A and B both at the same time, so you can see I'm not being able to do my special move. Sometimes as I want to. You just take the turtle blimp, go up to Manhattan, which is Shredder sent up all the way into the sky. Time spent. Scene 4, New York has been destroyed, meanwhile Manhattan suspended in the sky. You can see these guys are creating no walk zones. So if you go up and down, they go up and down with you, and on both sides they throw their spears.
So we fight in the streets of Manhattan for a little bit until we make our way down to the subway. After fighting in downtown for a little bit, the streets of downtown, we make our way to what looks like Central Park. In the background, fight more of these pink foot soldiers who have these spears and try to surround you from 2 different directions. Here are the
these guys.
rock soldiers with the bazookas, so you sort of have to use your special move to beat them, and that takes away a bunch of your life. And then the foot soldiers.
Come to life.
The statues of the foot soldiers come to life from Central Park. After fighting a bunch of foot soldiers in Central Park in the streets of downtown, we make our way to the subway. Dispatch a few more foot soldiers.
Ooh, that was close.
And down we go.
We go inside the subway.
And this is where we fight the boss, after fighting a bunch of foot soldiers. Now when I was playing this game with a friend, he made a funny comment. He said that the henchmen use the train.
Foot soldiers coming out of the subway.
And the boss uses like this cart sort of thing. Which was pretty funny.
Now you fight Dirtbag and he comes into like this like buggy thing and...
The animals call me Dirtbag.
Like first he just passes you by and then he comes back. And he was also like featured in like maybe 2 episodes of the original series. Like 200 episodes or something of the old one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, with him, he keeps shooting you with these like... Damn it.
So you keep lowering Dirtbag's life as much as you can using the special move. And you can take a lot of hits and then you gotta finish him off.
And there we go. I kicked his mole ass. Yeah, I don't think I could have done that without losing a life, so... Let's see how we progress later on. Going underground, dudes, it's dangerous sewer, leads to Technodrome. This dangerous sewer. Now these mousers that come out right now just from that entrance over there on the right, they're really annoying. Like you gotta dispose them off super fast, otherwise they keep...
So after fighting waves and waves of foot soldiers, we fight the mousers for the first time.
Like these mousers right here.
And then midway through the level we fight the giant mouser, controlled by a foot soldier that spits out smaller mousers. That's a sub-boss for this level.
Like, big mouser guy now? Yeah.
And he's pretty easy. If you use your special move and use the up-down method, you can beat him pretty easily. And down he goes and we didn't even break a sweat.
Yeah.
So after fighting more and more waves of foot soldiers, we come to the end of the level and we fight Leatherhead. But before that, we get a slice of pizza.
Holy shit, I thought I was goner there. The last one was intense. Now, we get a pizza now before we fight Leatherhead, so that's good.
Now, I'm told Leatherhead is the strongest boss in the entire game.
It's gonna be a hard boss fight.
Because he's basically a damage sponge. He keeps taking...
Mr. Alligator.
He keeps taking damage after damage. So after dealing a lot of damage to Leatherhead, lots and lots of damage, we finally managed to weaken him enough to be able to beat him. And he has an attack where he grabs you by the neck and throws you.
Oh, there we go.
When that attack hits, it's not pretty. And then we go down to the Technodrome from the sewers in a gaping hole that leads to the Technodrome.
6, let's find April, then... Oh, guess left too fast.
I gotta love the animation of going inside the Technodrome.
So we're in the Technodrome now.
And then this is the first time you see these guys with the guns. And the best way to deal with them is to...
These guys, you basically have to hit them with your weapon. Because you try to jump and hit them, then they move back and shoot you in the air.
And then the other new type of enemies are these robot guys who fire those rays at you. And the best way to deal with them is to use your jumping attack, because you don't want to be caught in between of their rays just like that. And then after fighting your way, you get onto this conveyor belt. And
these like current bolts going back and forth.
Yeah, whatever those electrically charged things are.
And it's not enough you have these, they put like foot soldiers on this too also, so you gotta fight them while you're dodging these things.
Like whatever those electrically charged objects are, we used to call them suppositories back in the day, me and my brother, because we had a sick sense of humor. So after fighting a lot of foot soldiers and other robots,
Razar now.
we fight Razar.
He's from TMNT, Secret of the Ooze.
And he's a sub-boss who's not that hard. Basically, if you use your special move and wither down his health, you can beat him. Like, he managed to get one health bar of mine down to 0, but it doesn't really matter because we're gonna fight the stage boss anyways after this sub-boss fight.
Alright, so we're on to Shredder now. Like just regular Shredder.
This is the furthest me and my bro reached back in the day when we used to play this game, because all our continues would be depleted and all our lives would be gone because we didn't know the mechanics of the game and how to use the actual tactics to win the game and all the logistics that go with it. So this felt like one of the hardest boss fights in the game, but it's actually not, because if you just stick to the basics like I'm doing right now, you can see, just use the up-down method and your special move over and over, you can probably beat him by losing like 1 life at the very most. So as you can see, like we've only lost 1 life and we're on our way to beating him, and we still have like 3 cubes of health left now and 2 cubes now. And then we beat Shredder, rescue April.
Thank you. Look. Isn't that Crank spaceship in the sky above Manhattan Island? Hey, Shredder's getting away. I love these 8-bit cutscenes. Hey, turtles, take to the sky. We can't let Shredder get away. I always like the look of these levels. Like, you see Manhattan at the background. Even though it's like 8-bit, it looks good.
So this is basically just a level where you take an elevator up to the rooftop where you gotta board Krang's spaceship.
Top of the building.
Once you defeat a bunch of enemies and the elevator goes sufficiently up, you reach the rooftop to board Krang's spaceship.
This is probably the best looking stage out of all of them. Like, you see the neon New York at night, or Manhattan, whatever you want to call it. Basically the city at night.
So after fighting multiple enemies, we finally reached the boss fight to fight Toka, the snapping turtle, and as you can see, I'm not too happy about losing a life, but that Toka takes a lot of hits, so if you use the same method of beating him, the up and down method and the special move,
Secret of the Ooze,
you gotta...
It's easier if I like just had some lives banked.
You gotta make sure that you have a lot of lives, because you can take a lot of hits. And what I was saying earlier in my playthrough was he was also one of the characters that was introduced in the second live action movie Secret of the Ooze way back in the early 1990s. And we managed to beat him by just losing 1 life, so that's good. We go on to the spaceship now.
So let's see how this goes now. We lost way too many lives on that level. Cowabunga, we have to hurry in order to stop Shredder and save Manhattan.
So we board Shredder's spaceship and we fight our way to Shredder and Krang. And I just want to say that the background music in this stage is like literally the best in the game, and I love this background music. You can literally jam to the background music. I literally jam to the background music sometimes. Just listen to it.
I guess the longer you play this game, the more fatigue sets in, and the more mistakes you make.
It's a version of the Ninja Turtles theme remixed. So we fight our way to the first sub-boss, and it's a mouser again, a giant mouser, with the foot soldier driving it. And I don't know if there's any difference between the one we fight here and the one that we fought in the sewers. The only difference I can see is this one's pink and that one was blue. So we beat the sub-boss and then move on to the second area of this mission. Use the up-down method to beat him fast and then just move on. And the special move along with the up-down method.
So I'm definitely going to have to use a continue. And once you use a continue, you start back over here.
So that's a good point about this mission, is that if you use a continue, you don't have to start all the way back from the beginning of the mission. You can just start from here, the second part of the mission. So I got beat up towards the end of the mission and had to use a continue.
I'll take one continue.
And then you get to the select screen again.
Now it's going to spawn us back to here. So hopefully we can rack up some lives and get some points.
So we fight our way to Krang, and that door opens up, and then out comes Krang. And same formula for Krang like all the other bosses. Just bank up a lot of lives, use the up-down method, use your special move. Make sure you don't get hit by his projectiles. Keep fighting him, keep just withering down his health. So after hitting Krang many times and getting him weaker and weaker, finally managed to beat him.
Let's see how it goes now. Hopefully we got enough to fight Shredder.
He just floats around in the air like that.
Super Shredder. Oh yeah. Game on.
And this is the final boss of the game, Super Shredder. They even show his transformation, which is pretty cool. And this is definitely the hardest boss fight in the game, at least that's what it feels to me. But people who are bigger experts in this game say that Leatherhead is the hardest boss fight, so I'll take their word for it. But to me, it felt like this one was, because he's like literally a hit sponge. He keeps taking damage again and again and just absorbs it so much. So you gotta hit him like a lot, and you gotta have a lot of lives banked to like actually be able to beat him. And he has this one attack where I think he can turn you into a regular turtle also, like just like the previous game if he hits you. And he has those lightning attacks also. The only difference between the previous game and this one is that he doesn't have his clones. So he doesn't...
teleporting everywhere.
He doesn't clone himself and always have one more than the amount of
I don't even have him
turtles that you have on screen. So keep fighting him, keep withering away his life, and then sooner or later you'll be able to defeat him.
Close calls.
Like we did it with one life to spare, but
there we go.
Needed to deal a lot of damage to win.
We're putting back Manhattan where it belongs. Congratulations, Cowabunga.
Now we're back onto the tier list, and this might be a little bit of a controversial pick, but I'm literally going to put Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, NES, right at the top of S tier. and I know that some people don't think that this game is that good, but as far as my experience goes and my reasoning for rating this game so high is because this game like literally pushed your gaming skills. It required you to be a good gamer in order to beat it. Like when I was 7 years old, I couldn't get past the Technodrome level in Shredder, like regular Shredder. Then when I was 17 years old, I needed to use the save states in order to like beat the game. And then when I turned 21, I was able to beat the game without using any save states from playing the game from start to finish. So as you can see, like this game like pushed you and challenged you. That's why I rate it at the top of S tier, because the gameplay is just like perfect. Like it's not too hard and it's not too easy. And the reason I put it just a little bit better than the arcade game is because you had access to this at home. Like you did not need to go to an arcade with like $20 worth of like quarters if you wanted to beat the game. Because remember, this was like before the internet, so you didn't know what to do in a game. The only way to like know how to progress like within a game was trial and error, and like if your friends advised you, or if you had like something like Nintendo Power. But I don't think Nintendo Power covered arcade games, and I don't know if any other magazines covered arcade games. So this is how our tier list stands right here and right now, and we're gonna move on to the next game now. So next up we have Ninja Turtles 3. Shredder's Last Stand, which was released in 1991, maybe just a little bit after the Manhattan Project, and this was one of the few handheld games that I actually had back in the day, so let's take a look.
I hope so. Alright, let's get started. Let's see what we have gotten ourselves into. Oh man, it's that classic Ninja Turtles music. I don't know if the newer shows have that theme or not, but man, that brings back a lot of memories. So we can choose from Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo. I was always a Donatello guy growing up because he was smart. So the smart thing for me to do is to bring back Donatello. Alright, so it looks like we got enemies that come from the left and the right, although we're only fighting straight ahead now. If I recall, people will come behind you and you would have to move his head. Yeah, just like that. See how like his head is almost falling off and he attacks from that side? But I guess they're just taking it easy on us since this is just the first stage.
So for a handheld, I noticed that it actually has pretty good quality of sound and music. It almost sounds like the NES, which is really impressive for a handheld. And then this is the first boss, and it's Bebop, and he's on 4 legs, and he's fighting you like that. So this definitely does bring back memories, and the only 2 enemies other than that we've fought as of right now are Baxter Stockman and the Roadkill Rodneys. So once you progress through the first stage, you reach the second stage, and there comes Rocksteady, and he has the gun, and he shoots you with the gun. I sort of have very vivid memories of this boss fight, and I think this is where like the YouTuber who posted this video is about as far as he gets, just until Rocksteady. But I remember he used to fight Krang also, and like the way Krang would fight you is he would fire his like arms out and try to hit you like that, like in the older NES games. But I mean, for what it is, it's definitely an impressive game. So, like, with considering all the limitations, I would say this is probably good as far as like the whole handheld games went, with very limited processing power and very limited graphics processing capabilities. So we're back on our tier list now, and I would say Ninja Turtles 3, the handheld, Shredder's Last Stand, solid C tier, because I mean, for what it was, like, I guess a poor man's solution to Ninja Turtles gaming, it was pretty okay. And all I can really say is that if you wanted this as a poor man's solution, this was for you. Or if you wanted a game on the go and couldn't afford a Game Boy, this was the game for you. Now we move on to probably the biggest game of the retro era, and this is the game that people have the most fond memories of when they talk about retro TMNT game. For a lot of people, this is the best retro TMNT game, and this is Turtles in Time, the Super Nintendo port, which released in 1992. And I actually did not even know that this game existed because before the internet era and like during the late 1990s and the early 2000s, when there wasn't as much information on the internet as there is now, this game was like basically circulating around, and I played this in 2001 using emulators when my friend told me that this game actually did exist. I knew the arcade game existed because I saw the arcade game in arcades, but I didn't know that there was a port for the Super Nintendo also. And I own it now because of the Cowabunga collection legally, so I guess there's no problem. So this is basically the intro of the game, which is pretty cool. And by today's standards, you can basically see that the game is a little pixelated, like it looks a little pixelated, even if you run it on modern hardware, but that's okay. So we start off the first level in some building in New York City. As you can see, New York City is in the background. And we fight a bunch of foot soldiers and make our way to Baxter Stockman. And what they added a bunch of features in this new game was you could throw the foot soldiers left and right, and you could throw them onto the screen, which was pretty cool because the Super Nintendo was using the Mode 7 graphics, or however they refer to the processing, being able to handle objects being thrown at the screen, and the processing being able to handle scrolling in many different directions, not just left and right, which made the Super Nintendo port pretty cool because the Mode 7 was only brought out for the Nintendo port. The Super Nintendo port wasn't even there in the arcade game, which was pretty cool. So after fighting a bunch of foot soldiers and making our way to Baxter, we find Baxter. He's a pretty easy boss. His attacks are pretty slow and his movements are pretty predictable, so you don't even need to use like any special tactics or any special moves to beat him. You can just wait for him to land and beat him up. So after slowly beating him up and draining out his health with a few kicks and a few slashes on the ground, you can see that he spazzes out and then blows up and falls off the building, which is pretty funny. Hey, in the arcade game, I think there were like other animations of him when he gets defeated. We then move on to the downtown New York stage, and I thought this stage was one of the good-looking stages because you're right in the streets of the Big Apple or New York City. You fight a bunch of foot soldiers, make your way to the boss, and the other sort of feature that this game has was it would narrate the name of the level at the beginning, and it would show you like a covered silhouette of the boss. So in this level's case, it was Metalhead who was the boss. So here come the Roadkill Rodneys for the first time. And I forgot that even in this game, in order to do your special move, it used to take health away from you. Because I guess like when I played this game, I didn't use the special move all that much because I played it on normal. Maybe you have to use it more when you play it on hard, which is what this streamer is playing it on. And then you just beat up a bunch of more foot soldiers, and then you fight Metalhead. Here comes Metalhead. I'm gonna mangle you, green slime balls. This was one of the pretty epic quotes. And it's pretty easy to beat Metalhead in this version also. Like, he's harder in the arcade version because his attacks are a little faster and they're harder to dodge, but in this, like, he attacks so slow that you can basically just use the up and down method and predict his movements and beat him up. Like, I mean, I just finished describing like how to beat him, and the streamer was able to beat him just like that, and there he goes. Then you beat him up and you go back down to the sewers like every TMNT game. There's always a sewer level.
Sewer surfing.
Sewer surfing. You start off this sewer surfing level, you just fight a bunch of foot soldiers on surfboards and you dodge a bunch of traps. Or avoid a bunch of traps, however you want to phrase it. And it's also worth noting that the pizza monsters from that episode, the Queso Killer Pizzas, make an appearance, and you gotta defeat them basically by using your jumping kicks or timing your attacks at the exact right time. And it's funny because they base these
pizza monsters off the xenomorphs. That's why they basically look like yellow xenomorphs from the Alien series, which is pretty cool. And you get all these like pizzas which aren't labeled pizzas, they're labeled with a question mark, so they restore like a little bit less of your health, but they still restore your health. And then you've reached Rat King, who's another really easy boss, because all you gotta do is like place yourself between his like those two parts that are hanging out of his jet ski, like those two teeth that are hanging out of his jet ski, and just beat him up like that. And that's all you gotta do, because if you place yourself like right in the center, his missiles don't hit you, and his traps are like really easy to avoid because they move pretty slow. As you can see, he's almost like gone now. And that was like one of the few criticisms that I had for Turtles in Time, that I guess because the Nintendo games were so hard, so they made the Super Nintendo game a little easier to appeal to everyone, which was, like in my opinion, the game should have been a little bit more challenging than it actually was. But oh, it's a great game overall. And here we reached the Technodrome pretty early, and it's worth noting that the Technodrome is only featured in the Super Nintendo version. It's not featured in the arcade version. Let's kick shell. We make our way from left to right as usual, fight a bunch of roadkill Rodneys. Roadkill. And it's worth noting that this is the first time the Mousers also make an appearance, and they move like a little faster than like they did in the other games, but they're still, I guess, pretty slow and easy to beat up, because the game is like slower overall pace-wise in the arcade game, and the fighting feels like a little bit more jerky. In the arcade version it felt more smooth because of the extra processing, but still an amazing game nonetheless. So we keep fighting our way to the sub-bosses, and then we fight Toka and Razar, both at the same time, from Ninja Turtles Secret of the Ooze, and later on they made an appearance in the animated TV show also. And I guess their attacks are also kind of slow, so if you use the up and down method, like the way this YouTuber is doing, we can probably beat him pretty easily. Just gotta be careful about their attacks, because I think Toka has like the one that freezes you, and Razar has the one that that burns you with this fire. And they also have this combined attack in which he rides the shell and tries to beat you up like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess the up and down method, like shown in this playthrough, is good enough to beat them. So there goes Razar, and he gets turned back into like a wolf pup, like in the live action movie. And there goes Toka, and he gets turned back into a baby snapping turtle like in the movie. Then you make your way to the elevator, and you fight some more foot soldiers on the elevator upwards. The last bunch of foot soldiers you fight before going to the top level. And this game was also the one that introduced like these sort of foot soldiers that block and just sort of appear out of the ground like the T-1000, like you saw earlier. Then we make our way to fight Shredder, and he says his famous line, "Tonight I dine on turtle soup." And you fight Shredder in this like robot sort of mech that he has, in which he shoots bullets at you, and he has these claws that he tries to grab you with and crush you with. And the way you're supposed to beat him is you throw the foot soldiers at him, which was pretty epic back in the day, and like sort of a good innovation of the gameplay. And it was brought over to the newer game as well, the Shredder's Revenge, the one that was made recently. And it's worth noting that when you're playing on the hard setting, all the foot soldiers that you have to fight are the ones that block, and then you basically have to do your running attack to stun them and then throw them onto Shredder. If you're playing on like easy and normal, then you just get the regular foot soldiers, so you can grapple them easily and throw them onto Shredder. Once you grappled a bunch of foot soldiers and throw them on, Shredder blows up like you're gonna see pretty soon. Just like that. His mech blows up. And he jumps into the portal. My patience is wearing thin. I am banishing you to a time warp, from which you shall never return. Like in the arcade version they actually talk, in this one there's just text because I guess of like the memory limitations and all that. And then we get a cool cutscene where we're thrown back in time from 1991 or 1992 back into the prehistoric age. And here we land in the prehistoric age where a bunch of pterodactyls drop bombs and a bunch of raptors come running at us. I always thought this game was pretty creative. And like my bro was like the type of person who used to try to find logic in places where you're not supposed to find logic. He used to say that like, why are there foot soldiers in this like time era? Which I always found kind of funny because I'm like, it's a game involving talking turtles that fight and it's not supposed to make logical sense. And we're introduced to these foot soldiers that carry the heavy weapons like these axes. So it takes them like a long time to like actually be able to swing their axe and try to hit you, but if they do, it does a lot of damage. And now we're also introduced to the rock soldiers for the first time in the game, and they look like a lot better in this game than they did in the Nintendo one, the 8-bit Nintendo one, for obvious reasons, because this game was 16-bit. They look more accurate to how they used to look in their TV show. And then after we beat all the hench people, we move on to fighting Slash. Your history, slime balls. I always thought that was a code that Bebop and Rocksteady used to say. But the key to defeating Flash, I was gonna say Flash, because I say Flash so much. The key to defeating Slash is that you gotta position yourself behind him and hit him, because if you try to like assault him directly, he's pretty good at blocking. So as you can see, this YouTuber is like attacking him from the back. This game always brings back memories. It's like every time I play or see this video game, it's like I'm way back in 2001, like in the summer of 2001, playing this video game. So you hit Slash from the back for long enough, and then he spazzes out and he blows up again, and he falls into the volcano or the lava. It's pretty funny. You then clear the stage and go back into the time vortex. So we go from the prehistoric age to basically right at the start, or the close to the beginning of the colonial age, and we're on a pirate ship, a Foot Clan pirate ship. Skull and Crossbones. This is when the Europeans were going to like the different parts of the globe and making contact with other cultures and colonizing them, for lack of diplomatic words. And you fight a bunch of foot soldiers on board the Foot Clan ship. And a cool feature that I thought on this stage was when you have this ship on the opposite end firing the cannons and firing the cannonballs at you, which is pretty cool. We also meet these foot soldiers that have the bow and arrow, and they just sort of fire once and they go back. They don't really reappear after firing their arrows again. So you have like one shot at being able to blow them up or slice them, dice them when you see them. And the same goes with these ones that throw the bombs. They just like sort of appear for like a few seconds and then leave, so you gotta kill them fast. So after fighting a bunch of foot soldiers, you now have to fight these rock soldiers that have the guns. They're a little bit more lethal because they hit you with the guns like that, like swing the guns at you and throw you into the air. After that, you fight Bebop and Rocksteady in their pirate costume. And NECA actually made figures of these, which was pretty cool. And I actually owned the figure of the pirate Bebop and Rocksteady, which are pretty cool. And basically use the up and down method again to beat them up. They do have a lot of range though, because Rocksteady has this pirate sword that has a lot of range, and Bebop has a whip that spreads out pretty far. So the best way to like get rid of them is probably to like just be a little bit further up or be a little bit further down and hit them. And this was actually pretty funny too. Like if you could like fool them, they would like hit each other and beat each other off like that, beat each other up like that, and dispose of each other. Then we go from the ship to the train, forward in time again, but this time it's not as big of a time jump as the last time.
Bury my shell at Wounded
Bury my shell at Wounded Knee, and now we're at the American Wild West. And this is one of the best background music sounds of the game. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, just listen to this music. And then, after beating the foot soldiers up, we make our way to Leatherhead. And we always used to say that line, "Oh goody, fresh turtles for lunch," even in the arcade game. So I guess you gotta use the up and down method again, just like always. And I didn't know that you could actually destroy his daggers, the ones that he throws them at you. Basically, if you use a lot of like agile attacks, it's easy to beat him, like the YouTuber is doing right now. You gotta time the attacks just right, but if you're just looking to beat him, I guess the up and down method is the best bet. And to like sort of do a combo of the light attacks, because once he takes a hit, he gets stunned for a little bit. And you just beat him like that, and we always found his like death animation pretty funny, because it was like he's having a seizure and he used to like move around and spaz around, which was pretty funny. We beat him up, and then we go, which was supposed to be like the distant future when this game was made, but now it's past the year 2020, which I find pretty funny. And they thought the future was going to be a lot more advanced than it actually did turn out to be, because you have all these like skyscrapers with neon lights and everything, and surfboards and whatnot. But the stage looks really amazing, especially with the Mode 7 activated graphics of the Super Nintendo. Like, you just don't scroll left to right, you scroll up and down and up, which is pretty good. Just keep beating up foot soldiers on their hoverboards. And you go left and right also, and you beat up the foot soldiers on those copters. And this is also like probably tied for the best background music of the game. You just listen to this music. Amazing. So your score gets tallied up, and then you go to the boss fight. You can see Krang in the background over there, flying. You fight Krang in his original body right now. Face the wrath of Super Krang. And I guess since Krang is like big and bulky, he's also slow, so use the up and down method and avoid his attacks, and he'll be pretty easy to defeat. So slowly wither down Krang's health by doing fast and calculated strikes, and then you beat up his whole android body. He escapes on jets that are joined to his like small chair, I don't know how he doesn't fall off. But I guess I'm being like what those guys who try to find logic where logic is not supposed to be found. So we go back from the futuristic city and we go into the space station.
Starbase, where no turtle has gone before.
Starbase, where no turtle has gone before. I love these voiceovers. You start off inside the space station, and you're like way to the future now. You're in 2000, which is probably a year I won't live until. And this is also the first time you see those robots that fire the electrical charges, the circular ones we just beat up. I also thought this stage looked pretty good. As you can see, the Martian scenery in the background and all the celestial objects in the background just look pretty cool. And so is the music. The music's pretty awesome as well. Although not as good as like the Bury My Shell at Wounded Knee and the Neon Knight Riders levels, but still amazing nonetheless. And we make our way to the trans-dimensional portal, and the last like variation of soldiers that we see are these rock soldiers with the rocket launchers that sort of burn the ground and burn your feet with their rockets. If the rockets don't directly hit you, the fire hits you, so you have to avoid them like altogether. And then you fight Krang inside this like small spaceship sort of thing. You shellheads are dead. And again, I think the up-down method is your best bet, and sort of like light attacks, hit and run sort of tactics are the best in order to beat him. He shoots out these bubbles that trap you from both sides of his. He also has this attack where he smashes his spaceship to the ground and crushes you, and he also fires these robots out that fire the electrical charge. But I guess you gotta use agility to your advantage in order to beat him. And these robots are like one-hit kills, so that's good. And once you beat him, his small spaceship blows up, and he's sort of like stuck inside the ship, but I guess you don't see him like from this angle. You then go through the trans-dimensional portal and back to the present day of when this game was made, which was like 1991 or 1992, inside the core of the Technodrome.
Technodrome, the final shell
Technodrome,
shock.
the final shell shock. Yeah, so they updated it to 1992 because that's when the Super Nintendo version of this game was released. And now you fight Super Shredder. In the arcade, you just fight regular Shredder. Like, he probably mutates himself in that sort of chamber. And I thought like he was actually a pretty easy final boss because, again, since the game is a little bit slowed down because of lack of processing, like the enemies don't move that fast. So if you use the up and down method again in this fight and just avoid his projectile attacks, you can sort of just hit him with your combos, and he won't be able to counter you that much. Like you can see, the YouTuber is like almost beating him with like no difficulty, which was sort of what I felt when I fought him. And if you just use the up and down method, dodge his attacks, and don't like line yourself up to him, he just takes a huge beating, and then you beat the crap out of him and he falls down, and that's it. Game's over. You won. Let's watch the glorious ending now. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, our 4 reptilian heroes, have overcome the arch-villain Shredder. And you return the Statue of Liberty, and there's everyone cheering, and April winks. So, epic game all in all. And then it plays the one of the soundtracks from that Out of the Shells tour. I forgot which one it is, but the end music is also pretty cool and pretty good. So after seeing the credits of the cast inside the game, you get this cutscene which says, "Congratulations, you've completed your training." and are now true ninjas. Cowabunga. Pretty cool. Thank you for uploading this, and thank you Konami for developing this game. Alright, so we're back on our tier list. Now I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for doing this, but my personal rating of Turtles in Time, the Super Nintendo port, is A tier, like top of A tier, just a little better than the arcade port. Now I know a lot of people are gonna get angry that I'm rating Ninja Turtles 3 NES better than Turtles in Time SNES. Now my reasoning is basically the reason I like Ninja Turtles 3 on the NES a little bit better is because like that game like actually challenged you, like it pushed you. Like first I couldn't beat it at all when I was 7 years old. When I was 17 I needed save states to beat the game, and then when I turned 21 I could actually beat the game from start to finish. So it was like literally a challenge. It pushed you to like actually be able to beat the game and to apply yourself and to learn the mechanics, learn the logistics, learn the ways, the means and ways of like beating the game, and then finally you beat the game and you feel that like yeah, the satisfaction was like really high. With Turtles in Time SNES, I can like safely say that a lot of people just beat the game on like normal and then forgot about it because the game didn't like challenge you to like go that extra mile. Like you can make the argument that yeah, sure, I mean if you want challenge your Turtles in Time, like lower the continues down to like 1 or 2 continues and lower your lives down to like maybe like 2 lives in the entire game, and set the game on hard and try to beat it that way. But like I mean come on, like let's be honest, like most people did not play the game that way. Like they just like sort of beat it on normal and then that was it, and they forgot about the game more or less. But like I would say from like like I wouldn't say professional because I'm not a professional gamer, but from like a hardcore gamer point of view, the Ninja Turtles 3 NES is definitely the better game because it pushes you and like sort of forces you to bring out your A game and do good in the game in order to beat it. But if you're looking from like a casual point of view, like a casual gamer's point of view, like they'll probably rate Turtles in Time NES higher, like probably like top of S tier, because if like it has good graphics, like the mode 7 mode adds depth to the gameplay, and it's not like really that hard of a game. So for casual gamers, like that's a pretty advantageous selling point, that the game is not that hard that you need to like be a good gamer in order to beat it. Now as far as representation of the TMNT roster goes, I would say that both Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, and Ninja Turtles The Manhattan Project are more or less equal in that regard because there's no clear winner. They both have a lot of good boss fights from famous TMNT characters and a lot of good boss fights from like other minor TMNT characters. Like in the Manhattan Project there's Ground Chuck and Dirtbag, who were very minor Ninja Turtle characters, and then in Turtles in Time there's the boss fight versus Metalhead, who was another very minor character at the time. And I guess the one big famous character, TMNT character, that doesn't make an appearance in the Manhattan Project is Baxter Stockman. And I guess he doesn't make an appearance was because you fight him 2 times over in the previous game in Ninja Turtles 2, so they didn't really want to bring him back. But I would say that both the Manhattan Project and Turtles in Time, the SNES version, have a better representation of the roster than Turtles in Time, the arcade version, because in the SNES version of Turtles in Time they added the extra Technodrome level, and with that came 3 additional boss fights. So that meant that there were 2 additional appearances by TMNT characters in that game as opposed to Turtles in Time, the arcade version. So as far as like having a good big roster in the game goes, I would say again that Turtles in Time and the Manhattan Project, they're both equal. Like there's no winner. Like they both have a good representation of characters, of TMNT characters. So the only like sort of complaints or like negative feedback I have with Turtles in Time was that they made the game like too easy on the normal mode, which is what most people played it in, and it was like a little bit like the gameplay felt a little bit slow and jerky compared to the arcade version. So for a 16-bit console, but I mean, it's a really good game overall. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I really like Turtles in Time and SNES. I just have those two like criticisms for it, which is why I put it like top of A tier, not S tier. So I guess that about wraps it for Turtles in Time SNES, and we're gonna be moving on to the next game now, and hopefully I haven't pissed off too many people. So now we move on to Ninja Turtles, the Hyperstone Heist for the Sega Genesis. And right off the bat, all I can say is that this game is literally just a watered-down version, or a downscaled version of Turtles in Time. Like, everything Turtles in Time does, this game basically does worse, as you'll see. Because the Sega Genesis couldn't handle Mode 7, so they had to make a totally different Ninja Turtles game for the Sega Genesis, and we're gonna take a further look. As we can see, the sound doesn't sound as good as the Super Nintendo version. Right now, the graphics are similar, but not as good. I would say the only thing that's better is maybe the intro, because there's more of the intro, and you see the city disappearing in the background. So yeah, like maybe the cutscenes are a little better, but that's about it. And we just start off with a bland typewriter sound that says New York City Stage 1. Start off in the sewers, and just looking at the game, you can basically see that it's almost the same as Turtles in Time. Like, I mean, if you look at the sprites, they're all like pretty much the same as Turtles in Time. But as I said before, the sound effects are not that good. Like they said in that console wars episode, that the Sega Genesis sound effects sound like people are on like excessive helium and they're trying to talk. Now the funny part is that I actually had this game when I was about 10 years old, way back in like 1997, and I'd gotten it in the Indian regions in one of those like cartridges where you have a couple of games all in the same cartridge. I don't know if they released those cartridges for the North American and the European regions. I'm guessing not really, because I mean in the Indian regions they didn't get a lot of business, so they probably made some concessions by releasing a couple of games on the same cartridge. And the other funny part is that I actually had a choice to buy this game or buy the Toxic Crusaders copter, the toy copter, and I chose the Toxic Crusaders toy copter instead of this game, which is sort of what I regret to this day, because no one back then knew that Sega Genesis games and Nintendo games and Super Nintendo games would become such hot commodities as far as the collector's market goes in today. And we're just gonna be moving on. Like as you can see, the gameplay is basically the same as the Turtles in Time, and with very little differences. The sound is a little different. That's about it, but the sprites are pretty much identical. So we're gonna go to the stage boss, which is Leatherhead. Now one of the differences was that there used to be 3 parts to each stage in this game, so I guess that was their method of making the game longer and adding more visuals, because there were fewer stages in total, but the 3 parts to each stage, so I mean, you can sort of say that maybe there were like more levels than actually the 5 levels that the game explicitly states. And I know before I said that I actually had this game, but then I also regret like not having the game and choosing the Toxic Crusaders copter instead of buying the game, which kind of doesn't make sense. But let me just clarify, like, I had a choice between the Toxic Crusaders copter and like the actual like box version of this game with the one cartridge and the manual and everything, and I actually chose the Toxic Crusaders copter instead, which is a decision I regret. And then later on, like, I got a cartridge which had this game, but it had like other games also, which was, I think, one of the key features or one of the exclusive features of the Indian regions. You used to get a cartridge with a bunch of games on it. So just to clarify, and this part of the first stage is basically the second stage of Turtles in Time. Like, the visuals look like almost the same and the sound is a little different, and that's about it. So after we beat a bunch of foot soldiers, we end the sort of trip up to the streets and we go back down to the sewers again. So once we beat all the foot soldiers in the third part of the first stage, we fight Leatherhead. You are too immature to hang with me, so this game had different dialogues for the bosses, but the Leatherhead fight is basically more or less the same as the Super Nintendo version. So after hitting away at Leatherhead, we finally beat him up, and then he does his funny death animation, or his defeating animation, where he like goes into a seizure and spazzes around and blows up. And then we're done the first level, move on to the second stage, which is the mysterious ghost ship. So we start off this level on the surfboards. Instead of surfing in the sewers, we're surfing in the ocean, or like the sea, I suppose. You can see like a city at the back, so I guess like let's just say we're surfing in the sea instead. And there really isn't much to show. It's just, you know, I'm sort of just showing the similarities to Turtles in Time. So after defeating all the enemies and avoiding all the traps, we board the ghost ships and fight our way further through the ghost ship. So as you can see, the rock soldiers also look pretty similar to Turtles in Time. They just sort of have a different color to their hats and their boots, maybe. So after defeating all the enemies, we get off the spooky ghost ship that took us to a cave sort of area. And after we beat all the foot soldiers in this cave looking area, we reach the boss fight, which is Rocksteady. And you look delicious. I'm hungry for some turtle soup. I guess he's trying to copy Shredder. And what I was gonna say is that it's good that, I mean, they tried to make the game like a little unique by changing up the sprites and the animations and the gameplay for Rocksteady. Like, it's pretty different from how he is in Turtles in Time with the pirate sword and fighting alongside Bebop. But what is not good about this game is that there's no boss fight versus Bebop, and you only fight Rocksteady. So after we keep beating up Rocksteady, we defeat him, and once he's defeated, I always found this animation pretty funny, even when I was a kid. Like, he goes and sits down abruptly, like he needs to take a shit or something, and then he blows up. So that's the end of level 2. So the next stage is Shredder's hideout, and at this point we know it's what to expect. Like, just beat up a bunch of foot soldiers in different looking locales. And here's the Roadkill Rodneys, which are pretty similar also to Turtles in Time. So once we beat up all the foot soldiers in the courtyard, we move on to the indoor part of Shredder's hideout. And this part of this stage looks pretty similar to the sort of Japanese looking stage in Ninja Turtles 2 NES, which was the exclusive level they made for it, the one in which you fight Shogun and the White Tigers. So here we fight those blocking foot soldiers again, like in Turtles in Time. And then these are unique enemies which weren't there in Turtles in Time that breathe out the fire. Some more blocking foot soldiers. So after we clear out all the foot soldiers, we go to the boss area of the stage, the Shredder statue, and we fight Hattori Tatsu. You must defeat my foot soldiers before you fight me, which I don't think is true. You can actually just go and beat him up directly. And so this is our third boss fight. Like he says, you have to defeat the foot soldiers before you fight him, but as you saw, like we can still hit him and still wither down his health. So Hattori Tatsu was actually not featured in the original animated series, the original TMNT animated series that ran from 1987 to 1996. He was only in these first two live-action movies, the Ninja Turtles movie from 1990 and then Secret of the Ooze from 1991. And I guess another reason why I like Turtles in Time so much is because all the bosses and basically all the characters in that game are from the animated TV show. Most people say that they like the movies better, but I always hold firm that I like the animated TV show better. So since Turtles in Time had more representation from the animated TV show, I like that game better compared to this, which had more representation from the live-action movies. And that's it, you just beat Tatsu. He's a pretty easy boss. Like, he doesn't do much. All he does is jump around and fire his darts, and if you use the up-down method, you can basically like go a little up or a little down and hit him. And we basically clear this stage. And then the next one is the Gauntlet, which is a pretty, like, I should say, shameful stage, because it's just like literally a recycling. Like, even the stage looks similar to the cave that we had. And they bring the pizza monsters over here, similar to Turtles in Time, and they just look a little bit more orange than actually green from Turtles in Time. So that's one of the differences. But this stage is basically like a dump of like everything recycled. And I mean, this game is pretty old, but spoilers alert, you fight 3 bosses and then you fight Baxter Stockman in the end, I think. Yeah, so you fight the same 3 bosses that you fought before, but now they're a different color. Whoa, so cool. I guess that makes them more threatening or whatever. This time when you defeat the bosses, they don't even say anything, they just like explode. And now here's Rocksteady with his different colors. Ooh, so cool. It's more threatening. And here's Tatsu, and I guess now he's wearing a red outfit, which is sort of supposed to be more threatening, I suppose. Like, you can really see that I'm not impressed with this like recycling of bosses. Because, I mean, Turtles in Time and the Manhattan Project had so many unique boss fights, and then this comes along, so you can see it's a pretty big disappointment. So after we fight the 3 bosses, we now fight the stage boss, who's Baxter Stockman in his human form. And many people will notice is that he looks extremely similar to the human Baxter Stockman fight in Ninja Turtles 2 NES, and his game mechanics are pretty similar also, so maybe we can say this is sort of like a semi-copied boss fight and not an original boss fight, which is also pretty cool. I guess. So after we defeat human Stockman, he just complains that his mousers have been defeated, or cries that his mousers have been defeated, blows up, and then we make our way to the Technodrome, which is, I guess, around this like underground cave area. And the only part I would say that I like better in the Hyperstone heist is, compared to Turtles in Time, is like the cutscene of entering the Technodrome, because this cutscene with showing the projection of Shredder is like better than the one in Turtles in Time where you just jump into the Technodrome. And in this stage, the Technodrome stage is called the Final Shell Shock, not just the final boss fight versus Shredder. And here we are, like, this is literally the last stage of the game. And I know, like, people are probably disappointed, like I for one am pretty disappointed. Like, Ninja Turtles 3, which was on an older, like, less capable console, the Manhattan Project, had about 12 boss fights in total. And Turtles in Time had 11 boss fights, but 2 of those boss fights were versus 2 bosses, Toka and Rezar and Bebop and Rocksteady. So you can say that there were 13 bosses in Turtles in Time in total. In this game, there are like literally 6 unique bosses because the recycled bosses don't count. 6 bosses compared to 13 and 12. Like, just let that sink in. Like, that's how much this game is not good in my opinion, just by that analysis alone. Now, since the Technodrome is underground, like, we don't even get the visual effects that we had in Turtles in Time of like the Martian scenery and all the celestial objects in the background, because we're under the ground and we're enclosed in the Technodrome. And here's where you fight the android body boss fight of Krang. I'll show you the power of Super Krang, and this boss fight is identical to the boss fight of Krang from Neon Knight Riders and Turtles in Time. Like, look at the sprites and the mechanics, and you'll see like they're all pretty much the same. See, like, his attacks are almost like pretty much the same as the Neon Knight Riders boss fight from Turtles in Time. And you probably beat him the same way too, just like do some quick agile attacks and just beat him that way. And down he goes. No boss fight versus Krang in a small spaceship like in Turtles in Time. Just all in all disappointment. I couldn't stop you, but Super Shredder will. That's what Krang says. And now we make our way to the elevator level, which is pretty much identical as the elevator level in the Technodrome part of Turtles in Time. In Turtles in Time was just earlier, and this game it's later. Here we go, and we just make our way to Super Shredder now. And it's good that they changed the stage. Like, the stage looks different. But the boss fight is pretty much the same as the Super Shredder boss fight in Turtles in Time. And way back when I was 10 years old, I beat this game without even breaking a sweat, because they just made it so much more easier than the NES Turtles games. Like, I guess I was playing on medium difficulty when I was a kid, like all those years ago, but the boss fight and the animations are pretty much the same as the Turtles in Time boss fight versus Super Shredder. And you just beat him, and down he goes. Same as Turtles in Time. Only the cutscenes and the graphics of the stages are different. So in this cutscene, like, because he's defeated and he crashes down all the way, the Hyper Stone gets broken, and everything is restored back to normal. I would say, like, April looks a little better in Hyperstone Heist, but that's about it. Like, if they animated her a little better, but even the ending is pretty similar. Now in the outro, we just get an end credits. Like, they don't even show the names of the characters, like, write the name of the characters to corresponding pictures. Like, we just get this sort of end credits, which it says cast, and it just shows a picture of the 4 turtles, and then it just states what other characters were in the game, which, I mean, is not as good as Turtles in Time. Like, you can see this game is lacking in just about every department. You know, you don't even get that cutscene in which Splinter says your training is complete and you're a true ninja now. You just enter your name and then you get the green game over screen. This game just skips over so much. It's like just a fraction of what Turtles in Time is. So we're back on the tier list now. Now I know Sega Genesis fans will aggressively defend this video game and say it's really good for their reasons or because they're like super big fanboys, whatever the case is. But for me, Hyperstone Heist just did not like live up to expectations. Now I'm gonna rate this on, like, I would say, like, considering the console capabilities, I would rate this like just a little better than the original Ninja Turtles video game on the NES, and not as good as Ninja Turtles 2 on the NES. Now, keep in mind that I'm rating this C tier because you have to also factor in the capabilities of a 16-bit console. Like, Turtles in Time was on a 16-bit console, and that game was friggin' amazing. And then what Hyperstone Heist was, it was just like a watered-down version of Turtles in Time in just about every regard. Like, I mean, the sound wasn't as good, the stages didn't look as good, there were like 6 unique boss fights compared to like the 13 in Turtles in Time. There was no Mode 7, so the game is like basically lacking in every department. So that's why I put it in C tier. And the reason I put it in C tier, like below Ninja Turtles 2 NES, was because I have more fond memories with Ninja Turtles 2 NES than I do with the Hyperstone Heist, and I look back more fondly on the time that I spent playing Ninja Turtles 2 NES as compared to Hyperstone Heist. So, yeah, as you can tell, I'm really not that big of a Hyperstone Heist fan, but I guess some people out there are. Kudos to you if you liked this game and it met your expectations, but for me, like, compared to Turtles in Time, it was like half the game Turtles in Time was, like, if I'm gonna be brutally honest. So let's move on to our next game now. Now, next we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Radical Rescue on the Game Boy, and I'm pretty sure you all know where this is going. Did not own a Game Boy, and did not own this game, so I don't have any nostalgia or any memories associated with this game, but we're just gonna have a look and say a few words just to have it on our tier list, and for the sake of thoroughness and longevity, we get an epic cutscene, which is pretty new for a Game Boy game. We're always saving April in these games. Oh man, this intro is extremely long. Yeah, that was an extremely long intro. And I guess they tried to make it like Super Mario 3. You can only use Michelangelo for now. And you can use the nunchucks as a copter in this game, which was a feature they added in later games also. But I guess this game did it first, I suppose. And it's a mixture of Ninja Turtles 2 and 3 gameplay-wise and Ninja Turtles 1, because you gotta go into like different areas, into different doors and different basements and sort of fight enemies like that. Yeah, I mean, pretty decent for the Game Boy. Let's skip to a few boss fights and see how they are. And here's Scratch the Cat. I didn't think I'd see him here. And in that new game, the fan-made game that released a couple of years ago, TMNT Rescue Palooza, I can see the graphics came from this game, and the sound, a little bit of the sound also came from this game. So, thumbs up for the creator of that game. I forgot what his name was. So, I suppose this is the way you rescue, and you rescue Donatello after a little bit of playing through the game. Let's go find... Oh no, it's Leonardo, actually. Let's go, they say let's go fight Raph and Don. So, can you switch to Leonardo? So you can actually switch to Leonardo, and I guess one of his abilities is that he uses a drill sort of attack, which is pretty cool. They really wanted to make it like a Super Mario game or a Mario game, whatever Mario fans like to refer to it as. So here's the second boss fight, and it's Dirtbag. Pretty cool that you can see like your life and the enemy boss's life. I think we have enough footage to see how the game is and how the game feels overall, so we're gonna go to our tier list after this. And there we go. You get another key. So I guess this goes somewhere, rescue another turtle. So we're back on our tier list, and I'm pretty sure you guys have already figured out where this is going. Haven't played this game, never owned a Game Boy, so can't really say whether I have good memories associated with it, or bad memories, or good thoughts associated with it, or bad thoughts. I would say just by looking at the game, it looks pretty good for a Game Boy game, but no. I mean, I suppose if I did play this back in the day, I would not like it too much because it had the same, like, maze structure of the original Ninja Turtles game on NES. It wasn't, like, linear and simple, like, just go from left to right or just go from point A to point B and, like, you're directed all the way. You don't need to figure out where to go. So, I guess if I did play it, I would not rate it as, like, very, very high because it looked a little overcomplicated, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people have a lot of memories, good memories associated with that game, and if you do, then kudos to you and props to you. I just didn't have a Game Boy myself, so again, can't really comment much. Moving on to our next game now. So now next we have the Tournament Fighters video games, and we'll talk about the Nintendo version first, the Super Nintendo version. Because the Super Nintendo version and the Sega Genesis versions were both released on the same day. So these games were released during the pinnacle and the popularity of the fighting game genre, which was started by Street Fighter and then amplified by Mortal Kombat. So even TMNT game makers wanted to get in on the fighting game and sort of like tournament fighting style action. Fight. So what we're seeing here is Michelangelo in the tournament mode fighting a bunch of opponents, but there's also a story mode in which you can only select the Ninja Turtles. and we'll go over it like in a little bit. But yeah, I played this game also way back in 2001 using the emulators, because before then I had no idea that existed. Like, I saw some of the Tournament Fighters games on display, but I don't remember exactly which games it was. It could have been this, or it could have been the Genesis version, like way back in the day, in like the mid to late 90s. And I just like sort of like envied the cover art that it was a Ninja Turtles game, and whoever had this game was pretty fortunate, because I mean I couldn't ask my mom and dad to buy me a game all the time. Like my game allowance was pretty limited. It was like one game a year, like, or maximum 2 games a year, and I'd already burned through it, so my mom and dad would get angry if I asked them to buy me an expensive game like Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. But when I played it using emulators, like, I found the AI a little bit too hard to sort of fight, and I was having a hard time doing the super moves, because I didn't know what the super moves were, and it was hard to do the super moves on a keyboard. So since then I haven't really gone back and tried to play the game more. Like, I assume now with like a move list readily available, I check the moves list and the moves don't seem like that difficult to do. Like, the super can actually just be done with pressing heavy kick and heavy punch, and that's all you gotta do to when your meter's full. You just press heavy kick and heavy punch and you do a super move. So the super move meter is disabled in the story mode, if I remember correctly. So my experience with this game was just like the AI was a little bit too challenging. I couldn't do the super moves on an emulator because they were too hard to do them on a keyboard and mouse. So I always used to get my ass beaten. I wasn't that good at fighting games back then. I suppose I'd do a little bit better if I tried playing this game today. And those were basically like the 2 biggest hindrances for me, so I never got too much into this game because of those 2 hindrances. And then the third hindrance that I would basically say is that I always preferred TMNT as a side-scrolling beat-em-up during the classical age, where you fight a bunch of henchmen and then you fight the series villains as bosses. But these games were just like you fight the villains 1v1. So they're missing the whole beatdown of the henchmen, which I thought was a vital part of TMNT. So those were basically like 3 key factors holding the game back for me. And when I started playing this game, like, my bro had moved on and he wasn't really into gaming at that time, and I didn't have a lot of friends who were willing to play this game with me, so it was just me and the CPU basically, and the CPU used to beat my ass, which wasn't too good. But I will say, like, what this game did really good was it basically created all the assets that the Mugen modders would take and make and insert these characters inside the Mugen game by creating them in the engine, in the Mugen engine. Because how they used to create the fighters back then was they would have a bunch of fighting games and they'd take pictures, and those pictures would be the sprites, and then they animate the sprites with the programming. And some basically Mugen creators were very ambitious and very hardworking, so they'd make their own sprites and their own animations, and we're gonna get to that in like a little bit. So I really like that this game basically laid down the groundwork for a lot of fan-made TMNT games, because they borrow heavily from the art of this game. Then they code all the games, all the fan-made games. So that's one part of this game that I really liked, and when I spoke to people, they say that they like this game a lot. Like the SNES version's controls are really good and really responsive, and it's easy to play. That's what people have told me. And there's a pretty big scene going on right now, like a tournament scene, in which the best players like from all over compete to see who's the best at this game, and Armagon is totally broken in that. And here we have the Shredder fight. The Shredder was a really good addition to this game, and we're gonna get to that in like a little bit. But yeah, and with the Cowabunga collection, like there's a lot of like competitive online play, which I think is pretty cool. Also, so the roster for this game is pretty good. Like we mentioned Shredder before, like before the Tournament Fighters games, there were literally no games that you could play as Shredder. And then came along this game along with the NES port where you could play as Shredder. But the problem was, like, there was no video game in which you could play as Bebop, Rocksteady, and Krang. Now, Krang was in the Sega Genesis game and Shredder wasn't. But in the Sega Genesis game, there was no way to, like, even play as the boss character. So upon the original release, you couldn't play as Krang and you couldn't play as the Triceraton. And we're going to talk about it more when we start talking about the Sega Genesis game, but I just want to put this out there. In the Super Nintendo version, which obviously, no surprise, is like literally the better version because Konami always preferred Super Nintendo. In this version, you can actually play as the bosses with a secret code that you would have to punch in to get access to the bosses, and the two bosses in this game were Rat King and Karai. Karai was actually the final boss, and Shredder wasn't even the final boss. But that's some information about the roster, and the rest of the roster, I mean, I didn't really agree with too many of the choices. Like, you obviously have the 4 turtles. You don't really have Casey Jones. I don't think April from the animated TV show would have made a very good fighter, so I'm kind of glad that they didn't use April. Like later on when April, in other versions when she's a martial artist, she could be a good fighter, but not the original April from the 1987 animated TV show. And then we have War and we have Armagon, who people did not even know who these guys were. Most people didn't know who these guys were because most people just went by the 1987 animated series and the live action movies, and those guys were none of them. They were in the Archie comics and they were in various comics. And then there was also Chrome Dome, who was in the animated TV show, but he was a lot bigger. They made him a lot smaller in this game, and you had to fight him, who was a robot. So instead of like Metalhead, we had Chrome Dome, which was like the other robot that the Foot Clan built to like deal with the turtles, who the turtles defeat, obviously. So, as far as the roster choices go, I would say the roster wasn't that good because, I mean, I think the game would have been more successful had they had like Shredder, Krang, Bebop, Rocksteady, because those were the characters that people knew the best and they wanted to use the most, but we never got a chance to use Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang upon the release of these games like way back in the 1990s. And we actually have the Mirror of Michelangelo fight right now, and this, I used to love this background. I think this is like one of the best looking backgrounds in like the entire game. I think it's called Skyline, and it looks like amazing to this day, like the way it's animated, like the neon sign, just the overall skyline, the billboard, it all looks totally amazing. I would say among tournament fighters, like this stage and the futuristic city in the Sega Genesis version, they're the two best looking stages that I think should be used the most because they're just so colorful, so vibrant, everything. So that's basically all I have to say about Tournament Fighters. I mean, it's a pretty good game, but I never really got into it that much. So I can't really like tell you stories about like how I beat some of my friends up or my cousins up or my bro up because we didn't play this game like all that much. But I would say among the 3 versions, this one looks the best, and from what I've heard, like it garners the most praise. So I would say this is the best version out of all 3 of them. So this is how the game looks and feels like in the Cowabunga collection. I'm going to take a look at the story mode now. There's character select screen for the story mode. The evil Shredder has been driven from New York City. The streets of New York City are calm again, but a new player is in town, a cold-hearted warrior who will do anything to avenge Shredder. Reporter April O'Neil is already missing. The Turtles would soon realize that someone else close to them has been kidnapped as well. This intro is really good. I'm holding your friends. If you want to see them again, you must bow before the forces of the Shredder Elite, Karai. Oh great, who is this Karai anyway? And what's with the Shredder Elite? Who cares who they are? They've got April and Splinter. We've got to find them. So this is how you get from place to place in the story mode using the turtle blimp. This animation is pretty cool of the turtle blimp going from place to place. I'm not going to even bother reading the text now because it's just coming and going so fast that it's hard to like read it out loud at a reasonable pace. So yeah, this is the first fight, and I think it's versus War because they said Mount Olympus. Yeah, they say Mount Olympus now, and you just drop down from the turtle blimp. So, yeah, and this is how the fights take place in the story mode. Like, you have a little bit of dialogue back and forth before the fight, and then you start fighting.
Round 1. Fight!
I don't know if the super meter is still... Well, I mean, the super meter is charging, so I don't distinctly remember if the super meter was on or off. Maybe they changed that in the Cowabunga collection, but I always remember the super meter not being there for the story mode, but maybe it's there and you just can't do your like devastating attack in the story mode, or you can because of the Cowabunga collection changed that, so I'm not really too sure. So let's just not dwell on that. So if I was making the roster for this game, I would swap out Chrome Dome, Armagon, War, Wingnut, and Karai for Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang, Leatherhead, Baxter, Stockman. I think if they added those 5 characters, it'd be a really strong roster. And I would say that the graphics overall, like for all the Ninja Turtles games, are basically the best in this game, and Turtles in Time. And some more back and forth after you finish the fight. And this is basically how the story mode goes. You just go from place to place fighting, get back into the turtle blimp, you just jump really high into the turtle blimp. And then you go to your next fight, the pirate ship, which is Armagon stage. So after you defeat Shredder, you free April. And I forgot about all the cameos. In this stage, the Foot Soldiers make the cameos, and in the Mount Olympus, Foot Soldiers along with Bebop and Rocksteady make cameos, and there's a bunch of other cameos and a bunch of other stages. And there comes April. April, are you okay? Thank you, I'm fine. You? Must hurry, they took Splinter to Thunderdome. Please go find him. The Thunderdome? We're on our way. And I think in like Leonardo's story mode, they say like, did they do bad things to you? Like they ask April, did they do bad things to you? Which I found pretty funny. I mean, it's basically insinuating that they did some adult actions with April, which I can't really go into. And there's not Chrome Dome, Wingnut. And as far as Wingnut goes, he was also in like maybe one episode of the animated TV show, so he was another very obscure character that made it to this game. But I guess they introduced all these characters in this game because they wanted to like basically try and sell the comics. But I don't really think it worked. So basically this is the sub-boss fight. When April says we have a surprise for you tournament fighters out there. The defending champion, Rat King. He's returned to defend his crown from this year's contestants. So this is the tournament mode again. We're gonna go back to the story mode briefly, but I just want to show you the sub-boss fight versus Rat King. We fight him in like this studio with the very 1990s cheerleaders in the background and the very 1990s hosts in the background. And I suppose super moves are there in the story mode, because I just saw Michelangelo do his super move, and that's what happens when you beat up Rat King. This is the sub-boss fight, the second last fight of the game. There's some more dialogue, and then you go on to fight Karai, who's the final boss of the game. We have news that may cause a big problem among the fighters in the tournament. New information indicates that a very strong fighter by the name of Karai is still alive. She has challenged the winner of the tournament to a final battle. So this is the final stage when you fight Karai. And keep in mind, we're still in the tournament mode. So we haven't switched to the story mode, but we're going to do that just to see the ending momentarily.
Round 1.
This is the final boss fight. And the stage is really cool. I would say this is my second favorite stage in the entire game. It looks really good. It looks really vibrant, colorful. And Karai is basically like all the final bosses, like one of the hardest to beat, because she has really fast attacks. And another really good addition to the stage is that you have the Channel 6 chopper at the background that's recording everything. But yeah, she has a very fast attacks and a lot of damage, so you really gotta do like super good. And there's the super move with the charge meter. I guess it is possible, so I was wrong. But maybe there's a way to enable it, but enough dwelling on that.
Round 2. Fight!
Let's just see the final boss fight, and then we'll see what happens. Like that attack used to be pretty famous, like when she used to go into the air and keep moving her like fists like that and say like "Hurria, hurria, hurria." Like, if anyone has the answer to what happened with the super move bar in the story mode, like, was it always there? Was it always accessible? Please let me know in the comments. Or was it turned off and somehow activated for the story mode? Was it turned off by default? Ha 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 ha. Yeah, that was her win animation and sound.
Round 3. Fight!
I guess in this game you could zone out the opponent pretty easily also, so I don't know, maybe sometime I should give this game another try. I'm not too sure. And that's how you beat the final boss and won the game, beat the game. Let's watch the ending now. Congratulations, you won the match. What are your thoughts? Yahoo, I won. Training. Daily is very important. And now we see the ending, and we're gonna go over the endings of the important... I'm off to vacation of a lifetime. We're gonna see the endings of all the important characters, the Turtles and Shredder. And then the rest, if anyone wants, I can check them out. Hey guys, meet me in the Bahamas. Surf's up, dude. And what I'm saying is, if you want to see the rest of the endings, you can check them out on your own. TMNT Tournament Fighters staff So these are the end credits. So Michelangelo wins a bunch of money and he goes on vacation to surf. It's pretty in character. So yeah, there's nothing much after that. After the ending slides, there's just a bunch of credits and that's about it. So now let's go to the story mode again and see. The original is always better than the imitation. So you fight your clone in this also, and then you free Splinter. Master Splinter, we are happy to see you are okay. Thank you for coming, my sons. Yet all is not well. The real master awaits you. Be careful, my sons. Karai is not an average fighter. Karai possesses superhuman power. Like none other, never be careless, my sons. Hey, we found out the metro train. Go down. You are Karai, master of the Shredder Elite. Ha ha ha, yes indeed. I'm so sorry to put an end to your pitiful little existence. You could exist longer in this world if you were to join me. And here's the final boss fight. So once we defeat the final boss in the story mode, we get the ending. I'm guessing the ending's similar for all the turtles. We've done it at last. We've defeated Karai and all of her minions. It's similar but not exactly the same. You have done well, my sons. However, you must continue your training. You may never know when evil will come again. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters end credits. So let's watch a few endings now. We already saw Michelangelo's, so congratulations. You won the match. What are your thoughts? I did it. Do you see this? Results from many years of training. My daily training has paid off. I must now set new goals and set out to achieve them. The only way is to continue my training. So Leonardo trains more after he wins the tournament. What I was going to say is, yeah, we've already seen Michelangelo's ending, now we've seen Leonardo's, so let's see Donatello's, Raphael's, and Shredder's, and then we'll move on. Donatello's win pose is funny. Congratulations, you won the match. What are your thoughts? I'm happy because I'll be able to finish my invention. Yeah, no, much sooner. No surprise there. Donatello's all about like funding his inventions in every game. Now I can finish my latest invention. And it's a nice effect. And it blows up. I may even have enough money left over to start a new project. It seems like everyone is in an awkward position when they talk. Congratulations, you won the match. What are your thoughts? You fought well against my Sai. You've earned my respect. Why is he telling April that? Like, Karai's knocked out cold. April didn't fight him. April Splinter, please accept these gifts to show my thanks to both of you. Okay. I mean, he's the one. I'm happy to know that I have friends as good as you. I mean, he's the one who saved them, so shouldn't they be giving gifts to him? Alright, yeah. That's Raphael's ending. Not very in character, but good nonetheless. So I guess Shredder's one of the few guys who actually faces the interviewer when talking. Congratulations. You won the match. What are your thoughts? Fighting alone will not give you power. You have to be smart to win. Thinks about that for a while. Who thinks about that for a while? I knew that I would win this tournament. I have defeated those menacing turtles for the last time. I must now look to bigger areas to conquer, like arenas, sorry. Yeah, I guess this is in character for Shredder. So I just also want to state that as far as all the other endings go, you can go back and watch them yourself. They're not very major characters, so I'm not going to bother. As far as the boss characters go, they don't really have endings with the slides like we saw with the Ninja Turtles and Shredder. Like, they just have some dialogue with April when they win, like Rat King tells his rats that he's won over the TV because apparently the rats can also watch TV, and then Karai says that she's the strongest fighter in the world, and that's about it. And I just want to look at the cover art for like a little bit because I find it kind of cool that they explicitly stated that they were trying to rival Street Fighter for the best fighting game, because the cover art literally says no Street Fighter has ever seen fighters or fighting like this. So they're pretty explicit about wanting to like be the better fighting game than Street Fighter, but that did not really happen. Nonetheless, it's an amazing fighting game still. I just want to talk about some of the stages and some of the cameos from the stages for a little bit. In the cafe stage, which is Raphael's stage, you can spot Tiffany in the background, or someone who looks like Tiffany, which was a coincidence. But from the old animated TV show, from the 1987 animated TV show, Tiffany was Byrne Thompson's girlfriend in that one episode, so I don't know if it was intentional to include her in this stage or not, but she's there, or someone who looks very similar to her is there. So in the scrapyard stage, you can see a whole bunch of trashed cars in the background, which is Donatello's stage. I guess that's where he gets some of the materials for his inventions from. And in the background, you can see Baxter Stockman in his fly form, so sort of like cheering for whoever, and Casey Jones also cheering in the background while he's basically bouncing himself on a hook. So this stage is basically my I would say my third favorite stage in the entire game, because it's also very colorful and looks pretty good overall. I'd say my two least favorite stages are the NOH stage, N-O-H stage, which is Asuka stage, because it looks very bad. It's like there's too much green in the stage, and it just doesn't look good at all. And it's funny when we say Asuka, because we used to call Asuka Akira all the time because I have a dirty mind. So I basically like named her after the porn star, which was pretty funny. And then the other stage I really don't like is Armagon stage with the octopus at the background, because that stage has like too much of like one color, and it just doesn't look that good. But coincidentally, that's the stage that's used the most in the tournaments, because I think it's like the most like symmetrical or whatever. So that's my thoughts on the scrapyard stage, and which stages I like and which stages I don't like. So as we said before, in the Mount Olympus stage, you can see Bebop and Rocksteady in the background cheering. And along with them, I think there's 3 red-colored foot soldiers that are also cheering. So this stage is also one of the better looking stages in the game, because there's a good use of color and a lot of good looking objects in the stage. Then in the art gallery stage, which is Chrome Dome stage, we can see Kala and Zack, the 2 neutrinos, in the background cheering, and a whole bunch of Mousers. And I guess the Mousers make sense making an appearance in this stage because they're robotic, just like Chrome Dome. And as far as like the look of this stage goes, I would say that this is like a medium tier stage. It's not that good looking, and it's not like that bad looking. as some of the other stages. And then finally, recognizable cameo-wise, we go on to the metalwork stage, which is the shredder stage, and we can see a whole bunch of multicolored foot soldiers in the background cheering. There's red foot soldier, blue foot soldier, regular purple foot soldier, and a green foot soldier. They're all cheering. I thought this stage looks pretty good also because of like the good use of the colors and all the various objects in the background and all the animation that goes along with the stage makes the stage look pretty good. So overall, this is like one of the better looking stages of the game. So we're back onto our tier list now, and boy did I have so much to say about the SNES version of TMNT Tournament Fighters. But I guess I just have so many thoughts about the game, and the game helped create so many TMNT fan games that I looked into the game so much and just basically brought out all my thoughts into this video right here, right now. So now we're into the rating of the video game, and I know I'm gonna again anger some people, but for me, this game is solid top of B tier. And the reason why it's B tier for me is because there are aspects of the game that I didn't like. Like, first of all, the AI is like a little bit too hard, and then I thought there were a lot of famous characters missing from the roster. Like, they prioritized minor characters over major characters. Like, this game would have been a lot better for me if instead of, like I said before, instead of Wingnut, Armagon, Vor, Karai, and Chrome Dome, we had Bebop, Rocksteady, Baxter Stockman, Krang, and Leatherhead. That would be like the TMNT fighting game that I want to play with a roster like that. So if they had like those characters, this game would be like a lot better for me. Maybe like A tier. And then like they could have made the moves a little bit easier to do. Like, I always struggled with the moves, but maybe that's just me. But as far as I'm concerned, like, the user friendliness of the game matters a lot. And then finally, I think like the best TMNT games are like the games in which you fight the henchmen and the robots and all those other like weaker enemies also before you fight the main villains. And in this game, you just fight the main villains. But that's not to say at all that this is a bad game. It's an amazing game. But for me, it's like it's slightly above average. That's all I'm going to say, and we're going to move on to our next game after talking about this game for like 35 minutes. So next up we have the Sega Genesis version of Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, and according to Wikipedia, this was released the same day as the Super Nintendo version of Tournament Fighters, so we're going to take a look at this game now. And this story mode, Splinter meditates peacefully. My sons, you are not my sons. Who are you? Oh, these sound effects were not as good as the Super Nintendo version. Meanwhile, in the sewers of Manhattan... Huh? Greetings, Turtles. Your Master Splinter is ours now. What? Why you? Your only chance to save him is to face me in Dimension X, along with some friends of mine, that is. Evil turtle clones, really great. We're gonna need some help on this one. You can count on us. We're with you all the way. Those are our allies. Hold on. The Turtle Space Shuttle. We're on our way to Dimension X. So yeah, so this game is basically in the story mode. It's an odyssey through Dimension X to go and find Master Splinter and rescue Master Splinter after he gets kidnapped by clones of the Ninja Turtles, which is pretty funny. Like, I thought right off first instinct is that if they wanted like to have bad guys in the game, why didn't they just put bad guys in the video game, or put neutral characters in the video game who are like fighting as mercenaries or whatever? Instead, like, the majority of the roster is good guys, and the explanation is that you fight evil clones of yourself, and that's like so overdone that it's not even fun. But whatever, I mean, it is what it is. So right off the bat, you can see that Konami is back to its usual ways of like always preferring the Super Nintendo over the Sega Genesis. Just looking at the game and listening to the sound effects, like you can see that the Super Nintendo version is better graphically and in the sound department. Now, coincidentally, like Donatello stage, among the 3 Tournament Fighters games, I would say this is tied for number 1 with the Michelangelo stage from the Super Nintendo version. This is like literally one of the few good-looking stages of this game. Like I'd say, like this is probably one of the best-looking stages in all of the Tournament Fighters games. And there's not a lot of very good-looking stages in this game. Like, let me tell you, like some stages are so bad that they're like vomit-inducing. We just so happen to stumble upon the best stage first. So that's my basically input on the graphics of this game. And unlike the Super Nintendo game, in which we had a map of the United States and we saw where all the locations were, in this it's a map of Dimension X, and you go from planet to planet fighting opponents. What I've heard is that the controls in this game are also not as good as Turtles in Time. Like, they're really jerky and the moves are hard to do and the controls are unresponsive. So going back to my history with these games is I never actually like played this game by itself. Like, I played the ports of the characters from this when they were ported to Mugen, but I didn't really like play this game on the Sega Genesis or any emulators or anything like that. So I can't really give any first-hand testimonies to the gameplay. The gameplay is just bad from what I've heard, and so some of the moves look decent, but another drawback was that in the Sega Genesis, if you had the 3-button controller, you had to like press one direction button to do the heavy kicks. Like, you had to press like front and A to do a heavy punch or a heavy kick, and then the weak kick would just be the A button. So that would suck as far as like the controls went. But overall, I mean, I can basically tell you from an observer's point of view how this game is, because I have not played it, and in today's day and age it seems a little outdated for me to go back and play this. So that's my input so far on the graphics and the gameplay and all that from like purely an observer point of view. And this is one of, like, I would say the medium tier stages again. Like, this is basically the standard for the medium tier stages, which one that doesn't look atrocious or doesn't look as good as the futuristic city stage. And we're gonna move along then and show a couple of other stages, discuss like a few of the characters now. So one of the other weird aspects of this game is that somehow April O'Neil looks like Blaze from Streets of Rage. So I guess we can sort of call her Blaze O'Neil because this is a fight versus Clone April, and they use the same sprites and with just different colors. So you can see that this is basically Blaze from the Streets of Rage series. It looks nothing like April from the 1987 animated series. So that was the one aspect of the game that most fans felt was kind of weird. And you can also listen to the music and see that it's not as good as the Super Nintendo version of Tournament Fighters. And then there's this stage, the Bioplanet, that looks absolutely atrocious. Like, what the hell is that thing at the background? And like the floor, it looks like they're all like xenomorph eggs or whatever. So yeah, really nothing great to look at. That's really all I have to say about this fight. Like, you're fighting Clone Leonardo and the background's atrocious, that's all. And then the another stage is the Jungle Planet. That's absolutely atrocious. Like, there's so much red and like it's so pixelated, and it's just like bad looking because there's too much red and there's too much brown. I mean, just the leaves are like of a different like green color and everything. And just the guy who you're fighting, Sisyphus or whatever his name is. Like, me and my friend used to call him Syphilis back in the day because he had such kind of a weird name. And I thought it was like Baxter Stockman because even though like we now know that he's a beetle, he kind of looked like a fly back in the day, so I thought it was like a different version of Baxter Stockman, and from like the European territories or like the Japanese territories where his name was like Sisyphus or whatever, but this character is an original character for the game and has nothing to do with Baxter Stockman. Like, this is a beetle and Baxter Stockman later on gets mutated into a fly. And that's really all I have to say about this fighter and this stage that you fight him in.
Round 3, fight!
So Michelangelo's stage is actually like one of the better looking stages in this game, and it's called the Mirage Planet, and I think like this is one of the few creative stages that's actually animated or drawn in this game. Like, you can see like some sort of celestial object in the background that's radiating some sort of light beam or some sort of gas, and then there's like flowers and leaves and like some biological matter that we're standing on. So I would say this is my second favorite stage in the game. Other than that, you just fight Michelangelo, who's an evil clone of Michelangelo, and instead of being green, all the clones are colored purple. That was the gimmick for this game. Then the clone for Ray Fillet is located in a place that's called an ocean planet, and you can see some sort of like spaceship or whatever it is crash into the ocean, and you're fighting on the debris of the ship or debris of some object. Don't know exactly, but again, this is probably like not a very good looking stage, as you can see. It looks very static and everything. And just a little bit about Ray Fillet. Like, Ray Fillet was actually in one of the episodes of the 1987 animated series, but this version of it is based on the comic appearance. So again, I think that had they placed more known characters in this game, like, the game would have been a little better than what it was. Like, very few people knew the comic version of Ray Fillet, and very few people knew who Sisyphus was because he was an original character for this game. And when you're trying to market your game, like, you should basically try to use all the assets you have to make your characters as known as possible, rather than trying to be like creative and making your own characters who no one hardly knows. And that's just my input on the roster. So moving along now. So once you fight all the bad guy versions of all the good guys, all the bad clone versions of all the good guys, you move on to fight the actual 3 bad guys in the video game. The turtles race to save Master Splinter. If you want to rescue your little rat buddy, you've got to go through me first. Come on, punk. Hang on, Master Splinter. We're almost there. So yeah, the Triceraton fight is, I would say, a good addition to this game, because everyone likes the Triceratons, and it's fun to actually fight the Triceraton when the Triceratons were relatively unknown. They just made one appearance in the 1987 animated show, but at this point. So I think this fight is one of the better fights in the game, and the stages is also like sort of a medium tier stage. It doesn't look like downright ugly because the dinosaur at the back is pretty cool, and the stage looks prehistoric. That's really all I have to say about the Triceraton and his stage. And the last aspect I want to sort of mention is that at release, the bosses were not playable. Holy shit, look at that attack. Like, it took out, like, almost all of Raphael's health. Yeah, so the bosses were not playable, like, during the launch of this game, and then they had to, later on, like, extremely later on, you had to mod the game to make the bosses playable. So I think, like, that makes the game, like, worse because you couldn't play as, like, the boss characters, which is a charm. Like, I'm sure a lot of people would want to play as a Triceraton, me included. And yeah, so once you defeat the Triceraton, you move on to the next sub-boss fight. I guess is the first sub-boss fight, and then the next sub-boss fight. That biting attack again. So there, Triceratops defeated. Just barely defeated. Alright, show your face, Krang. It's time for you to die, Turtle Freaks. Hang on, Master Splinter, we're almost there. And this is the sub-boss fight versus Krang. And right off the bat, you can basically see, like, how is Krang so small? Like, if the Ninja Turtles are 5'1" in the animated TV show from 1987, then shouldn't Krang be like a lot taller? Like, he looks like he's 6. Like, I mean, by Krang, I mean Krang's android body. Looks like it's literally 6 feet in this fight, when it's actually supposed to be 8 feet. Like, what's going on? And the other part that I noticed was, if you look at Krang, like, when he shoots his missiles, like, does he literally say "fuck off"? Like, listen to that. Like, let's listen to it one more time. Like, see, he says "fuck off." That's pretty funny. So yeah, I mean, this Krang fight looks entertaining, but again, it would have been fun to be able to play as the bosses upon release, and we know we can't really do that in the original release state of this game. That's how we're looking at it, but we can in the Cowabunga collection. So yeah, again, fuck off, fuck off. Sounds pretty funny. Let's just watch the boss fight now. And the other aspect I wanted to mention is that this game was one of the first to, like, include those breakable stages where you break the ground and then go into, like, a different area. So in this case, when you break the ground, you're on the upper level of the Technodrome, and then you reach the lower level. And then we move on. Ha ha ha. Most impressive little turtles. But you'll have to find me to save your precious Master Splinter. So yeah, surprise. You mean you're behind this, not Krang? That sinks it? You're toast, Karai. I don't know what they mean by that sinks it, but this is the final boss fight versus Karai, and as you can see, the stage doesn't look very good. Like, the first part of the stage looks like it's all one color, so it's pretty daunting on the eyes and not good on the eyes. Like, look, like the whole stage is just like a shade of yellow. And then the second part doesn't look that good either. Like, that's just what I think. Let's just watch the final boss fight, and then we'll reflect on the game's conclusion. Our attacks do a lot of damage, and she's pretty fast too. And the music is almost non-existent. It's just like a beat that plays a little bit. So yeah, the Super Nintendo version makes this look bad by comparison, I'm sorry to say. There we go. There goes the final boss. And we beat the game. Or the streamer beat the game and we were watching, to be more precise. Because I didn't beat the game. Can it be defeated by mere turtles? Ago. Master Splinter, thank you, my sons. You are true warriors. Cowabunga. Staff, yeah. So the credits roll. And I think you get the same ending with just about everyone when you play in the story mode. And it's worth noting that you don't actually get the good ending or the true ending unless you beat the game on like the higher difficulty levels. I think you get like a number of different endings, which is innovative for the time. Like, if you beat it on the easy levels, I don't know like what the levels are and what I think it's like 1 to something. I think the difficulty levels are like 1 to 8 or something like that, and if you beat it on like the first couple of like easy settings, you don't actually get an ending, you just get something that says beat the game on a higher difficulty setting to see the actual ending. Karai says that. That's all I know. So that's all I have to say about this game, and I guess we can go back to our tier list and rate the game now. So we're back onto our tier list now, and the last point I wanted to make about Tournament Fighters, the Genesis version, was the different modes that are in the game, and the only, like, I think useful modes are the story mode and the 2-player versus mode. There's a tournament mode in which you have to fight 88 opponents, I kid you not, 88 opponents on one life bar, and it's probably as ridiculous as it sounds, so we can probably say that that's a useless mode. The Super Nintendo version had a customized story mode version in which each of the 4 turtles had different dialogues and during the story mode and different dialogues in the end. So that's another way the Super Nintendo version was better than the Genesis version. And then the Super Nintendo version also had a customized tournament version in which you fight all the fighters, and then in the end you win a bunch of money as the characters in the game, and you could basically do the tournament mode as any of the characters in the game, and you could even play as the bosses using a code. So again, that's another way the Super Nintendo version was better than the Sega Genesis version. So just like Turtles in Time and the Hyperstone Heist, we can see like all these like different parallels of how the Super Nintendo version beat the Genesis version. So now it's time to rate the Genesis version of Tournament Fighters, and I would say it's between Hyperstone Heist and the original Ninja Turtles game on NES. Now, even though I have not played the original Ninja Turtles game on NES, and I haven't played the Sega Genesis version of Tournament Fighters, but I'm still rating it because I've gotten enough feedback that I think I can sort of rate it. And the only reason I'm rating it a little higher than the original Ninja Turtles game on NES is because I think this game would be a little bit more accessible to pick up and play. The original Ninja Turtles game on NES just had you doing so much and made the game overcomplicated when it shouldn't have been that complicated. So this is where I place Tournament Fighters Genesis, and I don't know if I'm going to piss off like Sega fans who had a lot of fun with this game, but that's just the way I feel about this game, and I think that's a fair placement, and we're moving on to our next game now. Alright, so now we're nearing the end of our retrospective and tier list video, and just listen to this music. So my jam. I actually downloaded this and I listened to it over and over. Love this 8-bit music. The turtles receive a strange letter. I offer you, turtles, a challenge. Let us meet in the streets of Manhattan and see which of us is the most powerful. Shredder's ultimatum. Of course, you really don't stand a chance. Shredder. Leonardo. That's amazing intro. I love this intro so much. Raphael. Michelangelo. Donatello. Casey. Hothead. And, of course, Shredder's in the game. And now we're on to Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters NES, which released just a little after the SNES version of Tournament Fighters and the Genesis version of Tournament Fighters. And I actually played this game back in the day when it was new. Way back in 1994 at a friend's dinner party, and I beat it in the dinner party itself, and this game's so amazing, it brings back so many memories. And after that, like another one of my cousin's friends had this game, and that biting move was very infamous and very funny. So yeah, so one of my cousin's friends had this video game, and we actually used to play the versus mode in this a lot, and we sort of had an agreement that no one was gonna use Shredder because Shredder was overpowered. Because among my cousin's friend and my bro, they would just use Shredder and do that scissor attack and just destroy the opponent. So I guess we all unanimously agreed that Shredder was a little overpowered, so we used to fight each other using any character but Shredder. And this game holds a special place in my heart because I remember I beat my cousin and hurt his like very fragile ego using some of the Ninja Turtles, and back then I was like 8 years old and my cousin was probably 11, and he really did not like that. So it's for that reason this game holds a lot of good memories for me. And I used to beat my cousin like doing that exact same move, and Raphael would climb onto the opponent and start biting them, which was pretty funny. And it's also worth noting that this game has like the most recognizable roster compared to all the Tournament Fighters games. The only like sort of obscure character that people didn't know a lot about was Hothead, and he was from the comics. But fighting in this was basically in the NES, and there are very few fighting games on the NES. This was one of them. So because of like the hardware limitations of the NES, we didn't have like a lot of moves in this game. We had like I think like maybe two special moves per character, and then we had the punches and the kicks. And then you could like get like some enhancement when that sort of like TV with Splinter's face and that attachment underneath it used to drop power-ups. So you just use the power. You just take the power-ups and you use them. And I forgot what the power-ups used to do because like I played this game so long ago. Like I literally played this game like 30 years ago first, and then maybe like 28 years ago again. And haven't played this game since. But one of the power-ups as we just saw is like a ranged attack, like a Hadouken sort of attack, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I definitely have some memories with this game, and I definitely have good memories with this game. So we're just gonna talk about like some of the characters a little bit more, some of the stages, the usual banter, and then we're gonna rate the game. So after you defeat all your brothers and basically prove that you're the one who should be fighting Shredder and by honoring Shredder's ultimatum because you're the strongest one out of all of your brothers, you have this bonus stage where you break down these walls, which was a pretty cool addition considering the NES's limitations. So if you're successful in the bonus stage, I guess you just get an end tally of like your points and all that. I don't know if it has any effect on the game. And then you go on to fight the other two opponents to sort of, I guess, develop your skills a little bit more in order to fight Shredder. You fight Casey Jones, and Raphael versus Casey Jones is a pretty like traditional famous rivalry. So I guess you can use this game to sort of settle the rivalry between these two. So you defeat Casey Jones and move on. We fight Hothead next. And we're fighting Hothead now. I have always found Hothead's like a picture in the versus screen pretty funny. Like he looks so angry, like he's about to like kill someone. And I guess this was a pretty good innovation for the NES, like having such a character with a big sprite considering all the technological limitations of the NES. And I sort of remember Hothead being like really strong in this game also, but he was slow, so to counter his strength, you'd have to like basically do a lot of agile attacks and like outpace him. But he was a hard opponent nonetheless, as you can see. So we beat Hothead and then move on to our final boss fight, the honoring Shredder's ultimatum now. Fighting Shredder. And before that, we have a little bit of banter back and forth. You may have beaten me in the past, but now it is you who shall taste defeat. And the amazing music starts again. And I just want to say that considering the NES's limitations, I really thought this Harborfront stage looks really amazing. Like, it looks as good as the rooftop stage in Ninja Turtles of Manhattan Project, because like all the drawing of this stage is like really good. Using all the colors and everything creates really good imagery. And yeah, this is the final boss fight versus Shredder. And Shredder was definitely overpowered in this game. In the versus mode, like as I said before, the easiest way to win was just use Shredder and like keep spamming that scissor attack, and your opponent basically wouldn't stand too much of a chance. Let's just watch the second round, and then we'll watch the ending, and then we can go and rate our game. We kept the banter about this video game short and sweet, which is what I like, considering we're reaching the end of this video, and the video's gone on for an extremely long time. Shredder had like a really strong throw as well. I remember that throw, like he used to just pick you up and throw you like a tennis ball. He had like no problems like picking up Hothead and like throwing him like 10 million miles away. To prove like how strong Shredder was. There we go. Shredder's defeated. The streamer defeated Shredder. Let's move on to the ending now. Shredder, this better not be one of your lousy tricks. You have not seen the last of me. So there's Splinter in all his 8-bit glory. You have performed well, my sons. Now let us celebrate our victory. With pizza? No pizza, just cheering? And there we go. That's Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, the NES version. A really good game and still holds up today. Now it's also worth mentioning that this game had a tournament mode where you select who you want to use in a tournament, and the tournament involved 4 players. So you choose who you want to use, and then you choose, I think, opponents. Maybe they can be a second player and computer players, and then you see a setup like this where you have the various fights. So you can basically say that the tournament mode in this game was more useful than the tournament mode in the Sega Genesis mode, even though this game was literally on a console which had more limitations and which was older and technologically inferior. So just proves how much can be achieved with the right mindset. Like even with like less resources, you can create a better game if you basically take the right decisions and plan your game better and implement the mechanics of the game better. Because I don't know like who would try to use the tournament mode in the Sega Genesis version, like 88 fights, win 88 fights on one life bar. I don't know if it's ever been done before. So you can basically see that this tournament mode uses the process of elimination, and everyone keeps getting eliminated until there's a last person standing. So this is the finals of the tournament, and after this there'll be a last person standing, and it's Raphael versus Hothead, and it's on the best stage, the waterfront stage, the best looking stage. So once you defeat the last opponent, you win the tournament. And that's how it looks. Alright, so we're back on our tier list, and I'm just gonna go ahead and place Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters NES just behind Tournament Fighters SNES, because the game is really good, but unfortunately because of like the hardware limitations of the Nintendo 8-bit Nintendo, they could not make a very comprehensive fighting game with a lot of characters and a lot of like different moves. But I mean, for what it was, like, it was a really good effort, considering all the limitations, as I said before, of the original Nintendo 8-bit entertainment system. They worked with what they had and they made a really good game. You obviously can compare it like directly to a 16-bit console, because obviously the 16-bit console will be a lot more powerful and will be capable of a lot more than an 8-bit console. So that's really all I have to say about Tournament Fighters NES. Just have good memories all along with it, and the only limitation I can really see is that, again, this is like a limitation of all the Tournament Fighters games, is that they don't have fights, versus the hench people and the robots and the various weaker enemies. Like, you just fight the villains, the strong villains, and that's it, and just fight your friends to see who's the strongest and who should fight the villains in the case of Tournament Fighters NES. So that's a lot of information on all the games, and we're down to our last game, which is a fan-made game. I'm pretty sure you guys are stoked that the video is almost finished, because this is an insanely long video with a lot of information. So now you've heard me again and again talk about TMNT Mugen and Mugen overall, and we're going to take a look at the Ninja Turtles characters that were released for Mugen. We're going to talk a little bit about Mugen, and then we're going to go and play some matches. So Mugen is actually a fighting game engine that was made to make fighting games, commercial fighting games, but then it got leaked to the public, so people used the engine to make their own fighting game characters and customize their own fighting games to have like basically anyone fight anyone, which is pretty amazing. So I first got into Mugen like way back in 2001, and we're going to be using the TMNT characters that were available in the summer of 2001 to play this Mugen build. And we're going to be fighting a number of opponents from like different franchises. So sit back, enjoy. You finally know what I'm talking about when I keep saying TMNT Mugen for those guys who don't know what Mugen is. Oh, we're fighting Wolverine as our first opponent.
Let's go, bub.
Battle 1. Decide the destiny.
And Leonardo is pretty similar to his Tournament Fighters version. Like, he had this endless loop. He had this endless loop move. And he had the
endless loop.
he had this ranged attack. What? Yeah. Close fight. So we're gonna play 2 fights with each character, and then
Battle 2. Decide
that'll
the
be
destiny.
Like when I was a kid, I couldn't do Leonardo's hyper at all, like to save my life. And all I do is the endless loop and the ranged attack. Yeah, there we go. Ooh, yeah. That actually does a lot of damage when it hits. So we won our first fight. So our second opponent is Silver Samurai, and I bet this stage looks familiar also. So as you can see, I basically stopped talking during when I was playing the video game because it was so intense that I couldn't both talk and comment about the game at the same time. But these were the type of matches that used to take place in Mugen. Now, as far as the opponents go, there's slightly newer characters that were released after 2001, 2002, that time. And the reason I chose to fight more recent opponents is because back in the day, I just had the keyboard and mouse. Like the DOS version of Mugen didn't really support most of the controllers back then. And I didn't even know which controller did support, but we had to use the keyboard and mouse. And on the keyboard and mouse, it was almost next to impossible to do the double quarter circle moves and like double quarter circle and A, which is how you do Leonardo's hyper. So I was always at a disadvantage when I used to play this game back in the early 2000s. So I would always like fight easier opponents, but now with like all the updates and everything, with the game engine actually supporting just about every controller, I find it easier to do the hypers, like a lot easier to do the hypers. Like as you can see, I've done the hypers in this match and the previous match. So that's why I sort of chose to fight stronger opponents. Like if you look at Silver Samurai right now, like he just basically spams the living shit out of you. Like you gotta look for an opening and you gotta seize the opening. So we're at a rematch with Silver Samurai, and the endless loop move that Leonardo had in Tournament Fighters, it just hit me that it was basically the same as his special move in TMNT. The Manhattan Project, because in both games, like he takes his katanas and spins around, and it basically creates like a chopper sort of effect, and that's how he gets his hits, which is pretty cool. I always liked that move when I was a kid. And here's the super move that we did again, the hyper super move, same thing, and screwed him up. Good.
Battle to decide the
so yeah, this was a pretty fun fight, like the old Leonardo versus a new Silver Samurai. It's the Silver Samurai's attacks are like so fast and so many that you basically have to time yourself just right to find an opening and basically be able to beat him. And then you gotta combo until you do like a shit ton of damage like that, and that's the only way you win. And I really enjoyed that. Now we're moving on to the fights using Michelangelo. Our first opponent is Juggernaut, and I bet this stage also looks familiar. Now Michelangelo has a few moves that are exclusive to this Mugen version of his. Like he has the Dragon Breath, but in Tournament Fighters he just shoots out one of those green Dragon Breath balls. In one of the supers in this game, he shoots out like a whole bunch. Like he shoots out like nine of those green balls, which is a pretty cool attack, and you're probably going to see it later. And then he also has his hyper where like he moves towards the opponent and he does a strong melee attack and he says attack, 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 and you're gonna see that soon too. And back in the day, like I used to play a lot of the X-Men characters in Mugen because there were a lot of Marvel games that Capcom made, and they were pretty good, so we had a lot of X-Men characters from Mugen. So most people, if they saw this game, they would think that I'm playing a TMNT versus X-Men game. And you just saw the Michelangelo hyper where like he goes back and he does a whole bunch of like melee attacks, and that does a ton of damage, just like in Tournament Fighters. And there, down goes Juggernaut. So our next battle is versus Sabretooth, another X-Men fight. Another fight versus X-Men characters. I shouldn't say X-Men fight because Sabretooth is not an X-Men. And there you see the Michelangelo's roll attack where he goes and rolls into his opponent just like in Tournament Fighters SNES. And in this match, I also do the Super Dragon Breath, but he blocks it off all the time. But yeah, as you can see, like he's a pretty big rush character in this game, Sabretooth. So a good counter to his rushing is just pick him up and throw him away. And he also gets Birdie to shoot you with his gun, so you gotta block when he does that. And I think this stage basically is perfect for Ninja Turtles, even though it's a stage from X-Men vs. Street Fighter Manhattan, but like the Ninja Turtles setting is exactly like this. Like the streets look like that, and then the ground breaks and you go into the sewers, which is extremely innovative at the time, and the stage looks like so good. And the music is also freaking amazing. Like when you play an X-Men vs. Street Fighter, just everything about this stage, the music that goes along with it, like the imagery is the best. It's like 10 out of 10. So props for that to the makers. So yeah, so we keep fighting Sabretooth, like he keeps rushing us, he keeps using Birdie to do his ranged attacks. We basically block his ranged attacks. When he tries to rush us, we pick him up and throw him. We hit him with our nunchucks a couple of times, sometimes he throws us. And there's the Dragon Breath, the Super Dragon Breath, which is a bunch of green balls spat out at him. It sounds pretty nasty, but that's how it is. And you see, like in this game, his blocking is pretty good. So he blocks all the hypers and the super moves. By super moves, I mean the Super Dragon Breath. So we just gotta basically take our time and use our throws to defeat him and our melee attacks. Because if you see, I did my hyper and he broke the hyper. Like he countered the hyper and he threw me, and then down goes Sabretooth. So next up we have Donatello fighting two opponents, and War Machine was another very famous character back then for Mugen because of the Marvel vs. Capcom games, so we used to use him a lot. And you notice with Nintendo, I mean Donatello, he has the same attack from Tournament Fighters where he flings his bow and does a bunch of damage like that, just like that. My bro used to call it Donatello's fan because I used to use it so much during the game. And he has other moves also, like he has a dragon move that he summons a dragon and then the dragon does a bunch of damage. That's also another good move. And he has the spinning bird kick, like the Chun-Li's spinning bird kick, where like he creates the copter effect, goes upside down and creates the copter effect with his legs, which is pretty cool. And that's Donatello blocking the attack from War Machine. That's when he goes, "If I can make it, photon cannon." That's pretty. It should be a pretty cool attack back in the day. And then that's War Machine's shoulder cannon. And this is the dragon attack that I was talking about. Like he had very little health, but when that hits, like it does a lot. And then here we have the fight versus Sentinel, and Sentinel was another character that we used to use in Mugen a lot because I used to find his keep away pretty cool, like how he could just shoot out missiles and lasers like that from his body. And you just saw the laser attack right now. With Donatello, we're using the melee attacks because in the DOS version, Donatello had a keep away attack where he sort of does this energy attack and it goes along the ground, but in the Windows version it's a little glitched for some reason, so it doesn't work. So for the Windows version, if you're using the old Donatello, like he mostly has melee attacks with the exception of that dragon attack that he does. But his melee is like pretty strong because again he does that bow slinging that does a lot of damage, which is pretty cool. And the reason I chose Donatello fighting Sentinel and War Machine is because he's the high-tech turtle, and like you saw, like that was Donatello trying to do his ranged attack that does the energy blast along the ground, but it doesn't work. It's glitched, like you saw, like him sending what looks like a clone of himself across the screen. And the other aspect was that he tried to grapple Sentinel, and I guess because Sentinel's so big you can't even grapple him. And then there's a dragon attack again and Sentinel blocks it, but if he hadn't blocked it, it would have done a ton of damage. So the best strategy to fight Sentinel is to go up close and sort of outpace him with the bow sling, because that's one of the attacks that really works. He has a lot of armor too, Sentinel, and he blocks a lot, so that's another advantage that he has going for him. And I always liked the satellite that he had, and I loved this stage back in the day because you see Master Mold in the background and the factory in Genosha. So I think it's a pretty cool crossover that you can have with the Ninja Turtles and X-Men. It would look something like this. So that's basically what I have to say about this fight and Donatello's overall utility in this Mugen build. The old Donatello's overall utility. They were great characters, and to actually stumble across all this in like the early 2000s when there were very limited crossovers and there was very limited potential to make fan games, it was just like freaking amazing. Like, couldn't be more grateful we had this back then, and I couldn't be more grateful that I have it right now. There goes Sentinel. So now we're fighting Earthquake from Samurai Showdown using Raphael, and we're on to Raphael's 2 fights. And I always found Earthquake really funny back in the day because he used to say Earthquake in that funny way, and he had this attack where he would jump on you and use all his weight to like sort of crush on you, but I think they took that attack out, and instead they gave him like that attack in which he farts in your face literally, like if you are too close to him. And Raphael had a bunch of his attacks brought back from tournament fighters. Like you can see the drill attack I use a lot because it's a good counter, and Earthquake is like big, so you need to counter when he's about to do his moves so you can outpace him. That's when the drill attack is really useful. And then there's that projectile attack where Raphael throws that like looks like a ball of energy, and for some reason he says trembly or something like that. I don't know what he's saying while he throws that. There's more of the drill attacks, and there's like that attack, like when he throws the projectile, I don't know what he says, like trembly or something like that. So yeah, so that's how you beat these big melee characters. And there's a super drill, but he blocked it. The hyper drill, the hyper attack. When you do the super drill and you do extra damage, you gotta charge it and then do the attack. So as far as there's a farting attack of Earthquake that I was talking about. Like if you're too close to him, he just like takes you and farts at you, which is pretty funny. I guess it was a legitimate attack from Samurai Showdown. So yeah, so all the other feedback I have is that the crossover potential are so cool. Like you can literally make characters from Samurai Showdown fight the Ninja Turtles, and Samurai Showdown was one of SNK's like biggest fighting game franchises. And there we pick up Earthquake, like we're like probably like 3/10 the size, but we still pick him up and throw him because we're amazing ninjas, and then get farted onto our face, and he's almost gone. Just need to do a few more attacks to finish him on, and we throw him in style and beat him up, and that's the end of Earthquake. And then we're fighting Dalsim using Raphael on our home turf, Manhattan, just above the sewers. And Dalsim was actually a character that we used to use a lot also back in the day when we were new to Mugen, and Mugen was just getting started way back in 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. So Dalsim had the keep away attacks, and he had the fire breaths and everything, which is what made him a challenging character to fight, because he would just like extend his arms and his legs and beat you up that way. And for this first round, we're just good at zoning him out. We used a trembly attack and the drill attack when he lets his guard down, and that's how we win. Just avoid his fire projectiles, because his fire projectiles are a lot slower than our projectiles. So yeah, those were like the extendable hand attacks that we used to find pretty amazing back in the day. And then the ground breaks and we go on to the sewers, which is our turf. and that's one of the side slashes. Like, you don't see that a lot because it's very easy to counter, but you saw it in that instance when we won the match. And then there's the super drill, like when you charge up the drill and you do the hyper and it does more damage, but it didn't do that much damage because we didn't get all of it to hit, and for some reason I didn't know why it takes so much energy. Like, it takes 3 bars of energy and it doesn't do that much damage either. So I guess in that regard, Raphael is not that good compared to all the other turtles, but he has other attacks that make up for it. Like, he has this really the drill attack from the Manhattan Project that's a very good counter. Like, if your opponent's doing an attack that's a strong attack, and it takes time for them to like actually hit with that attack because they're trying to generate momentum to hit you hard, it's a good counter. Like, you just do that attack fast and then you hit them before they hit you, and then like you saw, we picked up Dalsim and throw him away because we're amazing ninjas, and we keep doing the drill attack, but we have very little health, so he might win this round. And that's the hyper for the energy projectile. Like, the energy projectile is a lot bigger, and we throw it at him, and he blocked that, and then he did his own hyper at us. Like, when we were going to attack him, he blocked that and then did his hyper. So he did like 2 counters that were pretty good that won him the round. Our drill attack that's straight out of the Manhattan Project. I love how in this game and originally in Tournament Fighters, they brought 2 of Leonardo and Raphael's iconic moves from their special moves from the Manhattan Project to Tournament Fighters. It's pretty cool. And there he's doing a lot of damage with his extendable limbs and his fire breath. We pick him up and throw him as a counter, do some of our trembly attacks. I don't know, I still can't figure out what Raphael says, trembly. But he did a lot of good counters. Like, we tried doing our drill attack and then he countered us and beat us to crap, and right now he has a huge advantage versus us. And then we do the charged hyper of the drill hyper that does a lot of damage, but for some reason it didn't do that much damage right now, maybe because his health is like a little bit on the higher side. Now you can basically see the life bars, but the way the life bar works is that like mostly each character has 1,000 health, and then if you get hit or if you get hit and block, it usually doesn't do a round like 10 points gone from the health bar, or like 5 points gone from the health bar. Like, if you block, sometimes like you'll do 3, like you'll take 3-point damage or 2-point damage, which is what happened. Like, when we had very little health, like he did an attack and we blocked it, and we probably had like 1 health left, and that's what won us the game. So that's pretty cool. And that's the Raphael fight versus Dalsim. And then finally we have 2 fights using Shredder, and Shredder was so overpowered in this game. It's the creator actually introduced like some of his own original moves, like this one, which is an altered move from Tournament Fighters. So in Tournament Fighters he used to electrocute the ground, and in this he basically electrocutes like the whole screen. So he was so fast and he did like so much damage that Evil Ryu and Evil Ken were 2 characters that just could fight him. Everyone else used to go down so easily. Like, you saw those 2 cuts across the screen and how much damage they do. So he was just like insanely overpowered in this game. So he had those 2 cuts that used to do a ton of damage, and then he had this like frenzy of melee attacks that you could do with him once your meter was charged to 2. And you can see like Evil Ryu stands a little bit of a chance, but when he does his combos, like there's a way you can break his combos like that. You just slash and the guy goes flying across the screen, and then you counter with your electricity attack or your 2 cuts, and that's what I did. So there were very few characters like back in the day that could like even challenge Shredder. It was like I said before, he was like super overpowered. We were fighting another X-Men character, Omega Red, who we used to also like because he had those like tentacles that he used to fight with, like just like that. And then again, those 2 cuts to do like so much damage, and in Omega Red's case they stun, so you can do more damage. And then there's the electricity attack. Again, ton of damage. And then his Shredder's regular melee attacks, like when he goes and basically does a rush with his claws and chops you up nice. I forgot what he used to say, like, but what it sounds like he says is war football, like when he does those attacks. So maybe you can listen to it again. It's like war football. And there goes the 2 cuts of more war football attacks, and that's it. Chopped to pieces, beat him up, wasn't even a challenge, and that's how overpowered Shredder was. Now I also want to add that for all the challenging and amazing fighting you can do in this game, you can also use it for comedic effects, like if you want to beat up a giant panda in a ring with like 100 people watching, like that's possible too. Like you see what's happening right now. This is a really hilarious part of the game that we used to do back in the day, where we'd like put this fat panda into the game and then beat the living shit out of him with the Ninja Turtles just for the comedic effect, because it looks so funny when you take the panda and you throw him all over the place. And just the absurdity of the situation, that it's 2v1 or Ninja Turtles fighting like this helpless panda, that just make it so hilarious. And now Michelangelo's throwing him around. In the first round it was all just me. This poor guy, it's like he doesn't know what to do. It's like we don't need to use our hypers or our like special moves, no nothing. Like all we're trying to do is just take him and throw him around and manhandle him. Alright, he'll be glad that manhandling actually ended. So we're back on our tier list now, and we're finally down to our last game that we're gonna rate. TMNT Mugen is just freaking amazing. Like, and keep in mind this was just the first phase. There were other characters released over time, as time went on. But this TMNT Mugen game was basically, if you like crossovers, this was basically a dream come true. And there's another funny story associated with TMNT Mugen. Like, I enjoyed using the Ninja Turtle characters in Mugen so much that literally inspired me to learn karate in real life. So I learned karate from 2001 to 2003 when I was 14 to 16. So that's how you know like how epic this fan-made game was. The only sort of traits that were holding it back, in my opinion, are that even like back then, all those years ago in like 2001, 2002, we needed more TMNT representation in the game because we only had 5 characters. And the only other sort of negative trait I can think of is that, again, in this game, like, you don't fight the weaker enemies, you just fight the stronger enemies. 1v1 or 2v2 or 1v2, however many players you're using in the game. So now we're gonna rate TMNT Mugen, and I would rate it just below the arcade version of Turtles in Time. So in A tier, at the top we have the Super Nintendo port of Turtles in Time. Then after that we have the arcade version of Turtles in Time, and then we have TMNT Mugen. So this is how our tier list looks as far as all the classical games are concerned. All the games that were released between 1987 to 2002. And we're finally done. That was a lot of information, but it's always good to be thorough. If you made it this far, thanks a lot for supporting all my work.
So that wraps up our retrospective and tier list on the classical Ninja Turtle games. I hope you had fun. I brought back some memories for you, and I hope you enjoyed it overall. Now join us next time when we look at the second generation of TMNT video games, which were released during the run of the second generation animated TV show, which ran from 2003 to 2010, and then there was a break in 2011 between the second animated TV show and the third animated TV show, and the third animated TV show ran from 2012 onwards. Thanks a lot. Hope to see you in part 2.